Jim, you need to get a cheaper truck.
Oh, goodness.
That's supposed to be the joke here.
Yep.
Last night, it was kind of scary hearing about a farmer fall through the pond. Guess who else fell through the pond?
Hey.
Larry.
Larry did?
Yeah.
Cut
Larry.
nice and fill in?
Yeah, yeah. Just past his knees, so he
Yeah.
couldn't get out.
Yeah.
So,
Robert, you hear about that gentleman that
So
fell in a pond trying to save a calf down in Alma?
that's what we're referring to. Yes.
Or was it?
I remember that was my job growing up on a cattle farm, is to de-ice the
Chop
pond.
eyes?
Well, I got real spoiled when I was 10 and 11. They still let you buy dynamite at the hardware store. We'd take a stick of dynamite and cut it into fourths and light it and slide it out on the pond and just.
Never
Got
did
to have
that.
about 2 or 3 years of that before they stopped letting 12-year-olds light
Dynamite the pond?
out in the boondocks. And then it was
I could use some help. Sir?
I'm sorry, yes.
I said, I'll take some help.
Uh-oh.
Got it open right up to my email.
Okay.
Then it was
What icon
swinging,
did
swinging the sledgehammer
What's going
in the
on?
mall,
Oh, which word I got?
chopping ice.
We always used,
You already clicked on the email?
when I was growing up.
Well,
Yeah,
the mall had
okay, today, no dynamite.
an axe on one side and then a big heavy sledgehammer on the other.
Okay.
I got in college. My baby sister, 7 years younger than me, she got to get out there.
Actually, you got,
Chainsaw. I said, I never thought about using a chainsaw on ice cream.
the joint.
Seems like it is over.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Run some more things.
No, you got it. You're good.
But I thought, man, I was out there swinging a sledgehammer all the time, and she's out there with a chainsaw.
I've got one more, Earl. Another tech.
Oh, okay.
No, you don't even have to look. So, tell me. I joined the Zoom meeting last week, which I really didn't know what I was doing on the presentation, but
Oh,
I was up on the numbers.
Her lamp fell a couple times.
So Tuesdays and Thursdays.
oh, okay. I can do that.
I can hear everything.
Okay.
It's kind of quiet in here
Working
now.
out. Yeah. You're able to hear it, okay.
But theoretically,
I was hoping at the county commission.
Probably. It's already.
Hey, IT, I'm not sure if IT is listening. Let's see if we can get everybody's video turned on. I'm not seeing any videos on
Yeah.
before we get started.
Every time I clicked on video, it says that the host has disabled video.
Hang on.
I'm wondering if that, with everybody showing that.
Same here, Judge
Yeah, I
Wood.
think everybody's got that.
Same here.
The top button.
Same here.
On the keypad. Top right.
Top right?
Speaker. Nope.
Oh,
Yep.
got it.
click on the
We got it. Okay, it looks like IT has got it. There we go.
Thank you, IT.
Councilman Johnson is on. Johnson on. There we go.
Right, yeah, you're gonna just say the prayer.
Okay. And the Washington County Quorum Court is now called into session. Good evening, JPs and citizens of Washington County. We've got another packed agenda for the night. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you guys would join me in saying our Lord's Prayer, and then we'll go into the pledge. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go ahead and look at Ms. Patty taking the roll, see who we have.
Patrick Deakins,
Here.
Robert Dennis,
I'm here.
Sam Duncan,
Here.
Lisa Ecke, Suki Hires,
Yeah.
Lance Johnson, Willie Lemming,
Present.
Eva Madison,
Here.
Shannon Marty,
Here.
Butch Pond,
Here.
Sean Simons,
Here.
Evelyn Rios Stafford,
Here.
Chandra Washington,
Here.
Jim Wilson,
Here.
Judith Yanez.
Here.
Judge, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Patty. All right, we'll move on to item 3, the adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight? And if not, I take a motion. JP Hires.
Yes, I don't have the paper agenda in front of me because it wasn't able to get mailed out, but I would like to move that we take all of the items off of the consent agenda because we were not all there as voting members to consent to a consent agenda.
We have a motion to remove the items off the consent agenda items, so those will be read one by one. Any other changes to the agenda? All right, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second by JP Dennis. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we have the adoption of the agenda. Preliminary motions. Are there any preliminary motions in particular to read the ordinances and resolutions by title only?
I move that all ordinances and resolutions be read by title only.
We have a motion to read ordinances and resolutions by title only. Is there a second?
Second.
And the second, can tell who that was, JP Duncan. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the preliminary motion passes. Item 5 is citizen comments. At this time, again, we'll have citizens come and visit with us. They'll have allotted time of 15 minutes to come and share. Each citizen will be limited to 3 minutes. We ask that when you come and you're called to speak, please state your name and where you're from. With that, we'll open it up for citizen comments.
Judge, we have Janice Starr.
Ms. Janice Starr, you're recognized.
Hello, how are you today?
Good. Give us your name and where you're from.
I am Janice Starr. I'm from Springdale, Arkansas, of course. And I am a retired school teacher of 28 years, all in public school here in Arkansas. So I have a vested interest in our children of our county. I have been a library media specialist, a principal, as well as a classroom teacher. And I just wanted to say I appreciate so much seeing the Washington County library systems highlighted this past week on Facebook. That was just such a pleasure to see all of our library systems that we have in place. And I have two thoughts that I would like to share with you tonight regarding our wonderful library systems. I would love to see our hours, return back to normal as soon as we can. I realize that we are under, hard situation right now with COVID, but I think so many people in our community rely on our libraries, and I'd love to see all of them opening fully operational as soon as possible. But another thing I wanted to say is that, I believe our libraries have even a greater role to play right now with COVID and the schools. I think we need to really start thinking about our summer programs, beefing that up, our literacy programs for our school children, because I think schools are being hit so hard. I know for one thing, my granddaughter has been out of school probably 8 weeks this semester due to different family members getting COVID. Her teacher got COVID, that kind of thing. So she was out of school probably 8 weeks out of the semester. And almost all the kids that I know are behind a little bit, literacy wise. So I just encourage us to look at what we can do in our libraries this summer for our children, as far as having reading time, literacy programs, and really start the conversation right now about what we can do to help our kids, encourage them to, to read this summer and try to help them to get back on track, because so many of them are behind right now. So I just wanted to mention that. And again, thank you so much for highlighting that on Facebook. I think a lot of people need to see what we're doing and that we have some great libraries in our community. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Starr. Citizen comments.
Mike Landry.
Mike Landry, you're recognized.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead. You're
Okay,
recognized.
thank you. All right, good evening, Judge and members of the Quorum Court. I'd like to talk about something that was before the Finance Committee a while back, and that is the $4.5 million of CARES funding. And one of the things that I think would be prudent would be for this to go to county reserves. My understanding is that right now we've got $4.5 million in reserves. Our current budget is about $86 million for the county. I think, and my observation of government over the years is that you should have probably a 10% reserve. So if you take the current $4.5 million, add the $4.5 million in CARES funds, that's about $9 million or about 10.5% of the county budget for the year. Now, why should we have that amount of reserves? Again, it's prudent, I think, from the standpoint of best practices in government funding. Also, we never know what's going to happen. They're talking about variations in the strains of COVID over the course of the next year or two. We could have an ice storm more severe than the current snowstorm that's been aggravating us. We have tornadoes from time to time where the county has to step in and assistance there. We've had flooding in the last few years. I think we had some bridge problems there. We also have predictions that we're going to be getting into an inflationary period, especially from the standpoint of fuel costs. So we have all of these things going on. We have the possibilities of unforeseen expenses we don't even know about. And just because we have money coming in, which my understanding is to cover previous expenses related to COVID, just because we have the money coming in, I don't think it would be prudent to be spending that right away. We have to prepare to take care of possible future needs of the residents of Washington County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Citizen comments.
Judge, we have Shannon Sherman.
Ms. Shannon Sherman,
Yes, can you hear me, Judge?
Yes, Mr. Shannon Sherman, you're recognized. Go ahead.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Quickly, I had emailed a list of concerns over a month ago to all the Quorum Court members that represented over 30 plus community members out here in Blue Springs. So I hope you've had a chance to review that. The most important of those concerns is the drinking water of the surrounding neighbors that are close to the proposed park. We're all on wells. Again, we're not convinced that our water will be secure. So that is a major concern for us. And we're also concerned about there's a curve we feel like is very dangerous that's north of the property that I hope you've had an opportunity to come out and look at, or at least view it at some point in time. These large RVs that will be coming in and out, we feel like that's going to cause an increased concern with traffic, especially on this curve for us locally. The other thing that everyone expressed, not just myself, but our property values, we feel like with 4 RV parks within 2 miles of each other, it's just going to hamper or hinder the opportunity for us to sell our properties if we wanted to at any point in time with this many RV parks located in one area east of Springdale. And finally, the last 4 points, or the last point of concern we have is on section 11-200 criteria for allowance of conditional uses. We feel like numbers 4 through 7 have not been met. And I say that respectfully. That may be our opinion, but no one out of the 30 plus that signed these concerns feel like those last 4 in particular have been met, property values being one of them. The conditional use will not substantially diminish that. The proposed park is compatible with the surrounding area. It's zoned as agriculture, not commercial. And again, I just appreciate the opportunity to speak. Appreciate you doing your job. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Citizen comments.
Rachel Kirksey.
Rachel Kirksey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Judge Wood and members of the Quorum Court. I work at Genesis Church in South Fayetteville, and I'd like to speak to the CARES Act funding from my professional experience. I heard my fellow citizens' comments about waiting, about holding on to money for future emergencies, but I would like to submit that the emergency is here. We do a lot of rental and utility assistance in my work. Pre-COVID, we averaged 8 families and $4,000 of requests per month. In the month of January, we received over 25 requests and $18,000 in need. Most of these are working families who have lost work as a direct result of the pandemic, which is, I know that we hear these stories all the time. I simply wanted to come to you as someone who is sitting with 15 or 20 families over the course of a week and hearing their needs, and say that we have an emergency already happening and we will wind up with a much greater homeless population, and our shelter is already overflowing if this continues. And so I'd love to see this money used immediately for the needs that are already in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kirksey. Citizen comments.
Nikki Beaver.
Nikki Beaver, you're recognized. Nikki Beaver, you're recognized.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're recognized. Go ahead.
I just want to speak to putting the money, the CARES Act money, the 4.5 million of reimbursement into the reserve. We have 7.1 million to disperse for those who need it now. I think that's a substantial amount of money to start the process. If we get to the point where, we need to go into the reserve, then okay, but I think we need to start with that money and put this money back, the CARES Act money back, because we don't know what's coming. We think we are in the eye of the storm here, but we don't know, and there's been several professionals that say we have 18 months to go until things are back to normal. And I mean, we just don't know what this thing is going to do or what the next thing is going to present. And I think having the 4.5 in the reserve would help us to be better prepared, because we don't know if we're going to get another reimbursement or anything like that. So thank you. That is my 2 cents, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Beaver. Citizen comments.
Gladys Tiffany.
Gladys Tiffany, you're recognized.
Thank you. I would like to add my thoughts about the CARES Act money, because my feeling is that at this time, putting people out on the street, as we are in danger of doing so much at this particular time, is a really, really bad time when we have just been in the middle of this horrible, horrible cold snap. The idea of turning families out into the street is just abhorrent, where if we have a further emergency down the road, the possibility that they have to be turned out in the street in June is much more manageable than it is to try to keep people from freezing to death in the middle of February. I really would like to ask the court to seriously consider using that money the way it was intended to be used, and making sure that people in Washington County get cared for. And I'd also like to point out that 7.1 million, as has been mentioned other times, that 7.1 million is not adequate to cover the actual needs in Washington County. Really do need far more than double the amount of money we have available, and that really does need to be taken into consideration when we're thinking about 4.5 million, and 7.1 million does not cover the entirety of the need. And considering that as you're making your decisions is very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tiffany. Citizen comments.
Sarah Moore.
Ms. Sarah Moore, you recognize.
Hi, Sarah Moore, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I wanted to speak to, I understand that there is a concern for the use for this in the future, or not knowing what will happen in the future. But I think looking at what the numbers look like today of the need, and I appreciate Ms. Kirksey's comments earlier about utility assistance. I help and have been volunteering with the historic St. James food pantry, and I want to talk about our numbers to you, because to me, I mean, I look at them, and as a mom who stretches her budget, I don't know how we're going to stretch it much longer, and I don't know how we've gotten to where we are. Before the pandemic, our numbers at St. James were about 80 families a week that they were helping, and that was about March. We started doing delivery directly to people's doors as they were having trouble getting to where the food was. Today, 10 months later, we're doing about 600 families a week and growing. And we are experiencing extreme food costs. Our food is costing us 5 times what it was costing us per box from the summer. We're struggling to find fresh produce and bread, and we really have prided ourselves on being able to give people a box that can sustain them for a week, because we go to the outskirts of places like Lincoln and Prairie Grove, out to the outskirts down, dirt roads that are hard to travel with families that don't have transportation. And so I will tell you that we really are struggling as providers out in the community that are trying to meet this need to rise to this occasion. And we are coming to our government and saying, this is what these kind of funds are for. Whenever our community is suffering, we're asking for our elected officials to use these types of funds to be able to provide for the community where we're suffering, where we're having trouble. And our day is today. I think that the ordinance that was brought forward was very thoughtful. I think that it did take into account saving back a portion of it in the event there's some additional costs that come forward. I do know the sheriff's department was able to apply for some CARES money through the Department of Justice and got some of their costs in regard to the technology improvements that had to happen for court, some of the bleach and sanitation, the PPE to the tune of about $60,000. So I know we've had some different things, and there might be some of those types of instances in the future. And so I think the ordinance we'll see later tonight tries to take that into account. There might be some things, but I think the fact that we're looking at focusing on food that we're looking at these peripheral things with housing. People have additional costs around their housing even after their rent gets met that they're struggling with to stay in their homes. And I really like the focus in the ordinance around small business because we need jobs. I know people have brought up jobs. People have to be able to sustain once they get a rental assistance.
Can you go ahead and start wrapping it?
Absolutely. Thank you, Judge Wood. I just think that it tried to address several of those because we want to keep people working. And we know our small businesses are really struggled and they've moved through those PPE loans that they had originally. And really they're struggling out in places, in our rural communities especially. So I appreciate your time tonight. And I know you've got a hard decision, but I'd ask that you would support moving forward with that.
Thank you, Mrs. Moore. All right, we'll move on to item 6, approval of the minutes. The minutes were emailed out in your agenda packets. Are there any corrections?
Motion to pass it.
If there are no corrections, the minutes will be approved. Item 7, we'll go to the judge's report, and you should have a copy of your disposal county report in your packet. I did want to take some time and visit with you and everyone about my appreciation for our employees, in particular our building and grounds and road department over the past few days. Obviously, with the inclement weather, they went above and beyond to keep our buildings operable, as well as getting to those county roads for obviously emergency services, fire departments to get the folks if they need it. And so again, hats off to our building and grounds crew, as well as our road department. And let me go a little further about our employees. To watch them during this time, just speak to the type of people that we have employed in the county. The sheriff office had people that were saying, hey, I'll pick you up and take you to work, or I'll drop you off. Our juvenile detention center had that exact same thing. And across the county, we saw employees looking out and helping and supporting one another. And again, it's hats off to our elected officials for supporting one another, not just during inclement weather time, but all the time. It's just a regular course of business and a regular practice. And so again, I just want to thank our employees for what they do and how they, again, just come together and make it work. They're what makes the county so special. I do want to make an appeal to our JPs in that same vein, that this evening going forward, to work with me to be better in how we interact with one another. Again, I think we all can be better. We all can do better. We set the example for our employees. We set the example for our citizens who are watching us, and expect a level of service and a level of respect and decorum as we engage one another and as we engage them. And so I again ask, and my appeal to the JPs would be to join me in looking at ourselves to see how we can be better and how we discourse and visit with one another and interact with one another as we work with our citizens as well as our employees. Then finally, I'll share with the citizens of Washington County, our elected officials and JPs do wish to hear from you, and we want to hear your suggestions. However, threats, harassment, foul language, that's unacceptable, and our employees or our officials should not be subjected to that type of behavior. Again, I want to thank the citizens who do show that respect and decorum, and thank you for doing your part in making Washington County better. With that, we'll move on to item 8. Unfinished business. This is on its second reading, so there'll be no discussion unless it's moved to a third and final reading. But council, will you go ahead and read that one by title only?
Item 8 is an ordinance denying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for 62 Motor City.
JP Lemming.
Judge, right now, I would be voting no on that because they was asked to put a fence up and they haven't done that. And then somehow or another now, I guess we're trying to do a lot split and put salvage cars on 1 acre. And I don't understand what they're trying to do, but there's cars that salvage all over it up against the neighbors' fences. And, you know, and I just, right now, I'd have to vote no on it.
So again, it's on its second reading. So we'll go ahead and go to March unless we go ahead and move it to, you guys move it to a third and final reading. So is that your
I don't want to do that. Let's move it on.
To a third and final reading or move it to
Yes,
March?
let's move it on.
So we have a motion to move it to a third. Move it
No,
to
let's
March?
wait and do it next month.
Okay, got it. Thank you. We'll move on to item 9. Council, will you read that one? This is on its third and final reading, so we'll have discussion. Go ahead, Council. Will you read that one by title only?
Item 9 is an ordinance establishing minimum standards of habitability for residential rental property.
JP Rio Stafford.
Yes, thank you, Judge. This has been sort of making its way from committee to now on its third reading. Originally introduced by my predecessor, JP Sue Madison. But this ordinance is essentially about saving lives and ensuring safety, and especially protecting children, because children don't get to choose where they live. There have been fires in the past here in Washington County where children died. One of them was near West Fork. The kids didn't have a window from their bedroom, and we don't want our first responders to be having to remove children's bodies from a fire. The most important thing in this ordinance is that every sleeping room have an exit to the inside, a smoke alarm that's operating at the time the tenant takes possession, a source of electricity, the landlord doesn't have to pay the bill, and the same with the source of drinking water and wastewater. And one thing I wanted to just emphasize about this, the ordinance only applies to residential rental properties, and it only applies at the time that the tenant takes possession. So any changes or damage to the property after that is between the tenant and the landlord to work out between themselves. Arkansas is the only state in the nation that doesn't have an ordinance like this. If you cross over to West Siloam, they have minimum housing standards like this. If you go north of Bella Vista up into Missouri, they do as well. This is going to be good for affordable housing. HUD has standards with its Section 8 vouchers. And so this would expand the number of units where those could be used. Some landlords like to take those because it's guaranteed income. It's good for realtors because it brings up standards and raises property values that can command higher fees. We have a growing number of short-term rentals in the county. Airbnb listings are becoming more popular. We want to make sure people aren't sleeping in basements where the only exit is a wooden staircase. This won't, in my view, negatively impact good landlords who are already doing a good job and maintain their properties. This is just holding a few bad actors accountable. But at the heart of this, it's about safety. It's about protecting tenants and especially protecting children.
So JP Rio Stafford, will you make a motion?
And yes, and with that, I move to make a motion to approve this ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion by JP Rio Stafford, a second by JP Madison. Any discussion? Any discussion? JP Ecke?
Yes, thank you, Judge. I want to just say that this ordinance failed out of committee twice. I know that Rio Stafford, JP Rio Stafford's predecessor, JP Sue Madison, tried to bring it to committee and discussed it, and it failed both times. One year and one the next year. So then she brought it to the Quorum Court, even though it failed out of committee. For someone who always objected, and I can just hear her saying, I don't see how an ordinance makes it to the Quorum Court when it doesn't go through committee or it fails out of committee. That's my first point, Judge. The second point that I'm going to make is that there is an Arkansas landlord-tenant handbook that regulates this ordinance. And what this ordinance is doing is duplicating government intervention on what the relationship between the landlord and the tenant. We already have laws on the books. And that, more than anything else, is why it did not make it out of committee. And the committee voted against it coming to the Quorum Court, because it's a duplication of our laws. Thirdly and finally, real estate property and values has nothing to do with the safety of the landlords or the tenants or the place or potable drinking water. And so I'm going to vote against this for those three reasons. it's a duplication of government laws, and frankly, this ordinance did not convince the members of this court that we needed to duplicate Arkansas codes and laws. Thank you, Judge.
Other discussion? Okay, we'll go to public comments. Any public comments?
Angela Belford.
Angela Belford, you're recognized.
Yes, I would like to respectfully disagree with JP.
Angela Belford, go ahead. Tell us who you are and where you're from.
Oh, sorry, this is Angela Belford, and I live at 4734 Mays Drive in Fayetteville. And can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yep. Go ahead.
Yep. So anyway, this law, from my perspective, if the state law already existed to protect children, then we would not have a scenario where children are dying in fires because there are minimum habitability standards. So while there may be laws that talk about what a landlord has to provide, those are not a minimum level that is going to protect people. Those are really designed to protect landlords. And I know this because we are a landlord. And so from my perspective, what this is doing is it is exerting local control and saying that Washington County is a leader in the state, and they are deciding that the children in Washington County, if the state of Arkansas can't set some minimum standards, that children do matter to us in Washington County, and we're willing to put laws in place that are going to protect the children more so than the state is willing to protect them. So I hope that you will, in fact, vote for this ordinance, because it really is about taking care of people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Belford. Citizen comments.
Gladys Tiffany.
Ms. Gladys Tiffany, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to respectfully disagree with
Ms. Gladys, again, tell us who you are and where you're from.
I'm Gladys Tiffany. I live at 105 North Willow Street in Fayetteville, and I respectfully disagree with JP Ecke as well. And the fact is that Arkansas does not have a bill that actually, a law that actually addresses this issue at all. And in fact, we are known as one of the unfortunate states who do not have habitability protections in place for renters. And this is desperately needed. Arkansas will be working on that. People in Arkansas want this to be true for the state, but it is not. So I'd really like to agree with Ms. Belford that yes, it is very much needed, and it is important that Washington County lead the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tiffany. Citizen comments. Citizen comments.
JP Dennis.
JP Dennis.
Thank you, Judge. A good politician never asks a question unless he already knows the answer, but I don't know the answer to this. How much cost will this be for the landlords to get their apartments up to, or their homes or their rentals up to standard? What would be the average cost? Because any business will pass that cost on to the people who are renting. And one of our issues tonight is people not being able to pay their rent. So if these landlords take the rent up and expect the renters to pay it, then more of them will be out of a home because they'll be evicted for not being able to make the increase. So does anybody have those numbers on what the average cost will be for a person to improve those apartments that you're talking about, or homes? I know I'm asking in general, but if anybody has that, I'd like to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you, JP Dennis. JP Hires.
Thank you, Judge. I just want to go back to Article 1 of this and just read through what these minimum habitability residential standards are. A functioning smoke alarm, a door that opens and is unobstructed, a door or window leading out of the exterior of the rental unit from every sleeping room, an available source of electricity, a source of potable drinking water, a source of wastewater connected to a waste disposal system, an available source of hot and cold running water, glass or translucent plexiglass completely covering all windows, and an available source of heating. This isn't much. We're not asking for much. It's the bare minimum of habitability standards. Thank you.
Thank you, JP Hires.
Phyllis Tabila?
Yeah, citizen comment from Ms. Phyllis Tidwell. Go ahead and tell us who you are and where you're from.
Yes, it's Phyllis Tivella, and I live in Prairie Grove. And I would like to address JP Dennis's question regarding cost. I would suggest that there are landlords right now that people are living in places that are habitable, that have running water, hot and cold, windows that are all covered, that open up for every bedroom has a window or door. So they are able to afford it and people are living there. So apparently it's not much, as JP Hire said, we're not asking for much. We're asking for something that is safe and is livable. So I personally would not like to live in a home, rent a house or a department that didn't have hot and cold running water, a toilet that worked, a place to get in and out of the bedroom properly in case of a fire. Heat, especially now. I mean, look at our friends in Texas. They're suffering. So it's available and it's apparently okay. It's apparently able to do, since we have lots of landlords who already provide that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tabella. Any other citizen comments?
Sarah Moore?
Ms. Sarah Moore, you recognized?
Sarah Moore. I still live in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I know that there's been conversation on this in different quorum court meetings, and I know that there were some conversations where some JPs, and I appreciated the sentiment and thought, yeah, this is probably the case, that we are in good faith that people are going to do the right thing, that landlords are going to provide a safe living environment. I live in the heart of Fayetteville in a very desirable location in the Wilson Park area. Properties are the highest value probably in the county in this pocket of Fayetteville. And there are rental and their owned homes in this area. And I just happened to be walking one evening and met a young lady who's just starting her professional career. And she's probably all of 21. And she got a rental property and is a single person living in her property. And she proceeded to tell me that she had some concerns about somebody that had come by and hit on her and kind of made some advances towards her that made her feel uncomfortable while she was standing in her yard. And the person happened to drive by another day. Well, come to find out, she was very concerned because whenever she goes into her home, she actually doesn't have a fully closing, locking set of windows. And she'd had a couple of issues with a few other things with the property, like low water pressure. She had brought up over time. When she brought the windows that didn't fully close and lock to the attention of her landlord, after she had mentioned some low water pressure previously, her landlord actually told her that he didn't think that she was going to be that type of tenant. And he had no concern as a man in our community that was a concern for her, that she should fear for her safety. So I was on board and I followed and tracked with the folks in the court that were talking about, yes, you would think that in good faith, all landlords would want to do the right thing. But we do have many single people starting their journeys in our community that we want to envelop and we want to welcome in this community to be able to feel safe to live in our community. And I think it's not a lot to ask that she should have locking windows. And I feel like, kind of like JP Hires pointed out, that it's concerning that some of our vulnerable folks that we want to protect in our communities, you know, young people, children, can't have kind of these bare standards to make sure that they're safe in their home. So that just really was eye-opening to me when I ran into this neighbor of mine. I gave her my number and said I'd help her at any time, but that shouldn't have to be the case. She should feel safe in her home she's renting in Fayetteville. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. More citizen comments.
Nikki Beaver.
Nikki Beaver, you're recognized.
I have a question. So what is the difference between this ordinance and the code that the city has? I mean, they have to all meet to be. I guess to JP Stafford, whoever put it forward. But what is the main difference?
This is citizen comments, so they'll just be listening to your comments.
Well, could someone explain that part? Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Beth Koger.
Beth Koger, you recognized.
Thank you, Judge Wood. Beth Koger, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I just want to urge the court, I know you're getting ready to vote on this, but when you're sitting there listening and thinking about it, please think about that this ordinance will affect the people, mostly people who have no voice, who have no seat at the table, people who don't have a choice of where they live. Nobody wants to live in a place with no running water or no heat or no electricity. But that's what people face sometimes. And I mean, it's hard to believe we're even having this discussion here in America, where you would think that we would be way above this. But I just want you to please think about the other people, the people who are actually affected by this, and how it is now without an ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Koger. With that, Ms. Patty, will you go ahead and take the roll?
Shannon Marty.
No. Here in America, where you would think that we would be way above this, but I just want you to please think about the other people, the people who are actually affected by this, and how it is now without an ordinance. Thank you.
It's a glitch. Sorry, that was some sort of glitch.
Go ahead, Ms. Patty.
Sean Simon.
No.
Judith Yanez.
Yes.
Patrick Dickens.
No.
Lisa Ecke.
No.
Sam Duncan.
No.
Chandra Washington.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yeah.
You say yes?
Can't hear it.
Suki Hires.
Yes.
Evelyn Rio Stafford.
Yes.
Willie Lemming. Willie Lemming. He's saying no. Jim Wilson.
No.
Butch Pond.
No.
Lance Johnson.
No.
I have 6, 4, and 9 against. So this ordinance fails.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Patty. We will go to item 10. This is on the second reading, item 10. Again, there'll be no discussion unless it's moved to a third and final reading. Council, will you read that one by title only?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for Blue Springs RV Park.
JP Deacons.
Thank you, Judge Wood. I'm fine with leaving it on second reading tonight.
All right, so they'll move to March's agenda. Item 11. Again, this is on second reading. There'll be no discussion unless it moves to a third and final reading. Council, will you read that one by title only?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for Phillips minor subdivision.
JP Lemming.
JP Lemming believes that's in my district, and I move that for a suspension of the rules and moving item 21-0007 to third and final reading.
Second?
There's a motion to move to a third and final reading, second by JP Ecke. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, Council, will you read that for a third and final reading?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for Phillips minor subdivision.
JP Wilson.
I move for the adoption of ordinance 21-0007.
Second.
There's a motion and a second by JP, I couldn't tell, who was that, Ecke? Any discussion? Any public comments?
Oh, we got discussion here about JP Hires.
JP Hires, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Judge. I just want to say I spoke with some of the neighbors out at Blue Springs. I was trying to go out and visit with them and see the location, but as you guys know, the weather was not on my side for driving that far. But I have had some discussions and I've seen some of the, well, you've all gotten emails with some of the photos and video of the location. I just want to say I'm going to vote against this.
Order. We're on the next item.
You're on the wrong item.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Whoops.
Thank you.
It's on Phillips minor subdivision. Any other discussion? All right, let's go to public comments.
Gladys Tiffany.
Ms. Gladys Tiffany.
My comment was about that. My comment was about the last issue. I don't have a comment on this.
Okay. Any public comments? Ms. Patty, will you go ahead and take the roll?
Shannon Marty,
Yes.
Sean Simons,
Yes.
Judith Yanez,
Yes.
Patrick Deacons,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Chandra Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Evelyn Rio Stafford,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Jim Wilson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
Yes.
This ordinance passes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Patty. Item 12, this again is on its second reading, so there'll be no discussion unless it's moved to a third and final reading. Council, will you read that one by title only?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for the Ruby Graham Residential.
JP Duncan.
I move we take this to third and final reading.
There's a motion to move to a third and final,
Second.
and a second by, I couldn't tell who.
Wilson.
By JP Wilson. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, Council, will you read that for a third and final?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for the Ruby Graham Residential.
JP Duncan.
Yes, Judge. So this is a 1.75 acre parcel. The criteria set out by the county is that you can have only one home per acre. So this is actually hoping to split that lot to have two homes on a 1.75 acre parcel. So that would be 8.75 or 0.875 rather acres versus the 1 acre requirement. They had to go through planning and get a CUP for this. The planning board voted in favor 6-1. I don't see an issue with this. Haven't receive any backlash on this one. So I move that we pass item number 12.
There's a motion to approve, motion to pass item 12. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by JP Lemming. Any other discussion? Let's go to public comments.
Sherry Main.
Public comments. Sherry Main, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Judge. Sherry Main, 15574 Riches Road, Fayetteville. And I just had a question on this. I looked back on the planning meeting, and there was a couple of public comments made by some residents that lived in close proximity to this. And my question is, on such small lots, is there going to be 75 foot of road allowance as per the rules for the planning from each of these parcels? I know that's along Weir Road, I believe. But that was my question, just to make sure that that was going to be the requirement for the road frontage.
Thank you, Mrs. Main. Public comments.
Nick Little.
Mr. Nick Little.
Hey, thanks for having me tonight, Court. Can y'all hear me?
Go ahead.
All right. I just wanted to address Ms. Main's comments and JP Duncan's comments. It's not a lot split. It's just adding a second home to a parcel that's not quite 2 acres. So it would be considered more dense than what the zoning calls for. So yeah, it's, I mean, everything was up to par. All conditions have been met that were put in place. There was one additional condition that was put into place by the planning board, and it has since been met by the applicant. So yeah, she's all good as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, Nick. Nick works with the planning board, a planning team. Public comments. Public comments. All right, with that, Ms. Patty, will you take the roll?
Shannon Marty,
Yes.
Sean Simons,
Yes.
Judith Yanez,
Yes.
Patrick Deacons,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Rhonda Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Dookie Hires, Evelyn Rio Stafford,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Jim Wilson,
Yes.
Butch Pond, Butch Pond, yes. Lance Johnson.
Yes.
This ordinance passes.
Item 12 passes. Thank you, Ms. Patty. Item 13, again, is on its second reading. There'll be no discussion unless it's moved to a third and final. Item 13, Council, will you read that one by title only?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for Hog-Eye Wireless Communications Facility.
JP Wilson.
I believe that a representative of Verizon is available if anybody has any questions. I left it on.
It's only on the second reading.
Yes, I'm planning to move that we go on. And I also don't know if there are any persons that are wishing to complain about this. So I'm going to move for suspension of the rules and moving item 21-0012 onto its third and final reading and give those people a chance to speak if they're present.
Second.
We have a motion to pass item 13 and a second by JP Lemming.
Move to a third and final.
I mean, move to a third and final, I'm sorry. JP Lemming, you made that second. All in favor?
Aye.
Third and final. All opposed? All right, council, will you read that for the third and final?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for the Hog-Eye Wireless Communications Facility.
JP Wilson,
I move for adoption of the ordinance 21-0-012.
Second.
Again.
have a motion and a second to pass item 13. Any discussion?
JP Yanez.
JP Yanez?
Thank you, Judge. I don't want to complain, but is there any concerns for this project that we need to know of?
I haven't been contacted with any, but that's the reason I didn't try to do anything last time, to give them a chance if they wanted to speak. There were a couple letters, but that's all I'm aware of.
Thank you.
JP Dennis? And then JP Madison.
Madison first for me.
JP Dennis and then JP Madison.
I have family members that live down in that area, and I've asked them what they thought, and also some church members that live in that area. And they were 100% for it and said it was very needed. I've actually seen several wrecks in that area, a couple of fires, and sometimes they just do not have cell coverage. So I think it's a very good thing. I think it's a needed thing, and I think the people are looking forward to that area. Thank you.
Thank you, JP Dennis. JP Madison.
Just wanted to sort of echo JP Yanez's concerns. I'm not sure that tonight was the easiest night for people to be able to participate in a public meeting and voice opposition. That's just my concern. I just think tonight, with the weather and power outages and school being closed, it's perhaps not the best representation of public comment on this. And then I have one thing to say. I'm the last person that should be suggesting that people mute themselves, but we are getting a lot of feedback at home. And so if people, when they're not talking, could mute themselves, it would help it a lot, because there's a lot of noise and feedback and have been some outbursts actually. So thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Another discussion? All right, let's go to public comments. Public comments? All right, Ms. Patty, will you take the roll?
Shannon Marty,
Yes.
John Simon,
Yes.
Judith Yanez,
No.
Patrick Deegan,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Chandra Washington. Did you say no?
No.
Eva Madison,
Abstain.
Robert Dennis. Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
No.
Evelyn Rio Stafford,
No.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Jim Wilson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
Yes.
I have 10 for, 4 against, and 1 abstention. So it passes.
All right, item 13 passes. We'll move on to item 14. This is again on second reading. There'll be no discussion unless moved to a third and final. Council, reread item 14 by title only.
An ordinance appropriating $176,368.57 from the Coronavirus Relief Fund to various line items in the jail budget for 2021.
JP Deacons.
Yes, Judge, I'd like to move we suspend the rules and take it to the third and final reading.
There's a motion to suspend the rules and move to a third and final. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by JP Lemming. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, Council, will you read that one to a third and final? JP Lemming, I'm not sure. Will you hit your mute and let me see if that's some of the feedback we're getting?
An ordinance appropriating $176,368.57 from the Coronavirus Relief Fund to various line items in the jail budget for 2021.
JP Deacons.
Thank you, Judge Wood. This is a machine that allows our detention officers in our detention center to do a full body scan on detainees that come into that center. I see this directly relating to the CARES Act and the stopping the transmission of COVID-19. This will cut down on the contact that our detention officers have to have with individuals coming into the detention center, the close contact that's for transmission. They've described it much like the body scanner that you would go through when you fly at an airport. So this will be a 3D body scan. Some of the advantages, though, go beyond just COVID. This will give them a more thorough look in terms of looking for contraband. This will also be able to, I've been told through discussions, cite things that might be internal inside the body. And that gives them a functionality that they haven't had before previously. If they suspected that they were contraband internally, they would have to go to the hospital to get that examined. But this machine would cut down on that, so therefore saving us time and money and detention officer risk. So I move we pass this item.
Second.
A motion to pass item 14. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by JP Ecke. Any other discussion? JP Lemming. Excuse me.
Hit the mute button.
Go ahead, JP Lemming.
I was just going to second it. I don't have no, I'm ready for
Okay.
a vote.
Any other comments? Any other discussion? JP Yanez and then JP Madison.
Thank you, Judge Wood. I just need to know if we've looked for additional funds as grants before we go ahead and vote on this. That's the only clarification that I'm needing.
And JP Madison.
I guess I had hoped someone would answer JP Yanez's question. I guess my concern is how we're going to handle these CARES Act funds. It's just, there's been a lot of feedback on whether this is an appropriate use of the funds or not. We've gotten a lot of feedback on that. I believe this is a necessary expense for the sheriff's office. I just question about us labeling it a COVID expense and deciding to take it out of that category. But I guess my overall feeling on it, though, is that if we want it, it's going to come out of money, and it's all the same money, sort of, at least the way we're treating things. But I think we're going to have to be really careful about what we decide is CARES appropriate and what is not CARES appropriate. And I guess I have a hard time knowing that this one is really a valid CARES expense. Thanks, Judge.
Thanks. Okay, is that JP Simon? Nice, go ahead.
Thank you, Judge Wood. I'll echo my concerns from the last meeting. My understanding was that the sheriff had a holdover of close to $500,000 from his budget in 2020. And my request was that he look to see if those funds were still available and make his ask out of those funds. I haven't had a chance to speak with him or have any communication from his office as to whether that was a possibility. Not sure if the 4.5 million CARES fund is the most appropriate place to ask for this. I would like to see Sheriff Elder ask us to find that out of just unappropriated reserves or build it into his budget. Thank you.
JP Simon, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, public comments.
Sarah Moore.
Sarah Moore.
Sarah Moore. I would echo what JP Simons just said. I think that was the last conversation I recall being a part of too in the last meeting, was that there was some conversation about getting more information in regard to this being able to possibly be worked into Sheriff Helder's budget, or whether or not there were some grant opportunities. I believe that JP Yanez asked the question about whether or not any grant opportunities had been explored. And if there's someone that is able to talk on that, that would be very much appreciated tonight to understand. I've been in close contact with DFA with the state, and I know that they have been sharing that there are a multitude of law enforcement equipment grant opportunities, and I don't know if they would necessarily match perfectly with this piece of equipment, but I think it's definitely worth exploring, and maybe that's already been done. I know our grants team works really hard, but I just didn't know if we had the opportunity with a little bit of time that had passed and the weather that's happened, if we need to maybe hold this and do that due diligence before we make this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. More public comments?
Mac Mayfield?
Mac Mayfield?
Oh, he's not able to talk because he doesn't have an updated version of this. Go to Gladys Tiffany.
Gladys Tiffany, you're recognized.
Before I speak, did somebody want to address the question about grants?
Go ahead, Ms. Gladys Tiffany, you recognize who you are and where you're from.
Gladys Tiffany from Fayetteville, and I do really feel like that this is not really a thoroughly examined question. I really do think that this is not really, there seem to be a lot of questions about this that are not really being resolved, and I really kind of feel like there needs to be more examination of what's going on with this request.
Thank you, Mrs. Tiffany. Public comments.
Beth Koger.
Beth Koger, you recognize?
Thank you, Judge Wood. Beth Koger, Fayetteville, Arkansas. Several weeks ago, I wrote Mr. A.J. Gray, Director of the Arkansas Department of Emergency Management, and I copied the court on that about a new grant from FEMA. Well, it was new last summer anyway. It's called the Emergency Management Performance Grant Supplemental, and it was especially in response to COVID. And let me say, I'm all in favor of Sheriff Helder and the jail getting the scanner, but I think that we should look at all the grants that are out there, and also, as I've mentioned before, about the Homeland Security grants that the county gets. I would think that with the pandemic, I would like to see the county actively pursue that angle about using some of the money we had from that. Excuse me. Anyway, Arkansas was allocated $1,295,699 for the EMPGS grant. And it was specifically to help state, local, tribal, and territorial emergency management agencies with preventing, preparing for, and responding to COVID-19 health emergency. So I would think the scanner would fall under that, and I would just like to see the county pursue that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Koger. Citizen comments.
Sherry Main.
Ms. Sherry Main, you recognize?
Yes, thank you, Judge. I just have a comment. I'm wondering if this that's requested from the CARES money has been a before thought before CARES. I mean, before the coronavirus hit, is this something the jail was seeking, type of equipment? And again, with the next thing on the agenda as far as the body cameras, are these items that the sheriff was seeking to get funds for? Or is this because there is money available in the CARES package, and these items can be useful for the jail? Are they just, I don't know how to say it, are they just put in because there are money available and it was based on the jail, I guess, payroll as to why the county got the funds in the first place? I know Sheriff Helder had mentioned that, so I'm just, I don't want something to be tagged something when it's not. And there are lists specifically what qualifies, what doesn't qualify. I know some stuff is in a gray area, but it shouldn't take too much to figure out what's actually black and white. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. May. Other comments?
JP Simons.
JP Simons.
Thank you, Judge Wood. Just a point of clarification in the research that I have done on this. Both the body scanner and the body worn cameras, to my understanding, were items that were being looked at and researched by Sheriff Helder. They were things that he set aside to make room for other COVID-related expenses last year, even to the point of being able to reduce the cost of some of this equipment by looking at other options and looking for efficiencies. So I do believe that these things are both needed and unequivocally so for the safety of our officers and the community. For me, it's an accounting issue. I would like to see it come out of a different pot of money. There's no question in my mind whether or not it's needed or not, or even if it qualifies for the COVID CARES. It's unrestricted money to be used as a reimbursement to the county. To me, that's not a question. I would like it to come out of a different pot of money. But I did want to voice my support in the fact that these are needed things that a lot of thought and a lot of research has been put into. Our officers need these to be safe. Our inmates need these to maintain their safety and to reduce costs of transportation, hospital exams. My wife is in medical imaging. You don't want to know how much it costs to do a PET scan, CT scan, or an MRI on an inmate that may or may not have, some sort of hidden object. So I definitely see a need. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, JP Simon. JP Yanez, and then JP Dennis.
Thank you, Judge. Just follow up because my question about the grants was not answered. I just want to make it a habit that when anything comes to the court that's equipment, that we've done our research or if there's any grants available. I think that's being fiscally responsible as a court. And so that question was not answered, and I'm concerned. I just don't want to spend this money, especially with the next item. There should be money out there if, our community needs it. So that research should be done prior to being on the table at the quorum court. So I'm going to make that a habit and I'm going to ask every time. Thank you.
Thank you, JP Yanez. JP, was that a citizen comment?
Gwen Gertz.
Gwen Gertz.
Excuse me, my name is Gwen Gertz. I'm from Fayetteville, Arkansas. I did read about what the qualifications are in order to use CARES funding. Explicitly stated was that CARES funding needs to go to things that are COVID related. So I don't quite understand, unless the scanners are going to be used to detect the virus. Maybe that's why it's COVID related. Otherwise, pardon me, but I'm confused.
Thank you, Mrs. Gertz. Citizen comments. JP Dennis.
Thank you, Judge. I want to express my support for both of these, but I shouldn't talk about both at the same time. However, I'm for them, but I'm also for any dollar that we can get is a dollar saved or a dollar not spent. So if there's possible, I don't want to have it fail because we're not going to go after a grant. I would rather put it off until the next quorum court meeting, just 30 days or, a month. I'd rather put it off and then look into, can we get some of these grants that were mentioned? Then if they're not available, then we pass it with what we have. So I don't know.
You're making a motion.
Do I need to make a motion to table it until the next quorum court meeting because I don't want to see it fail tonight.
The appropriate motion would be to postpone till the next quorum court meeting.
I would like to postpone till the next quorum court meeting on.
Is that a motion?
Yes, sir, it is.
You have a motion on the floor to postpone item 14 until next month's meeting. Is there a second?
I second.
A second by JP Yanez. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed?
No.
No. Ms. Patty, will you take the roll? This is a roll on the postponement until, on item 14 until next month. Until next month's meeting.
Shannon.
I second.
A second by JP Yanez. All in favor?
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Shannon Marty,
Yes.
Don Simons,
Yes.
Judith Yanez,
Yes.
Patrick Deakins,
No.
Lisa Ecke,
No?
Sam Duncan,
No.
Chandra Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Evelyn Rio Stafford,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
No.
Jim Wilson,
No.
Butch Pond,
No.
Lance Johnson.
Oh, Lance is muted. Hold on.
Contra Washington. Lance.
Lance Johnson,
Yes.
Point of personal preference, Judge, is the public mic muted? We're hearing a lot of public comments after public comment time.
I'll ask IT if they would look at that while we go ahead and tally the vote. What was the numbers, Ms. Patty?
I have 9 for and 6 against.
So it goes, it gets postponed and moved to March's meeting. Thank you. We'll go on to item 15. Item 15, again, it's on its second reading. There'll be no discussion unless moved to a third and final. IT, if you guys would look to see if the public mics are open. Council, will you read that one by title only?
An ordinance appropriating $298,050.96 from the Coronavirus Relief Fund to various line items in the sheriff budget for 2021.
JP Deakins.
Thank you, Judge Wood. I have no motions.
All right, so that'll just move on to a third reading in March. Item 16, this is on its second reading. Again, no discussion unless moved to a third and final. Council, would you read that one by title only?
An ordinance appropriating $4,500 from unappropriated reserves in the general fund to various line items in the Circuit Court 5 budget for 2021.
Circuit 6?
6, yes, but I think it should be 5. No, maybe it is right, 6. Circuit 6 budget.
All right, JP Deakins.
Judge Wood, I'd like to suspend the rules and move this to the third and final reading.
Second?
There's a motion to suspend the rules and move to a third and final, a second by JP Ecke. All in favor? Those opposed? All right, Council, will you read that one for the third and final?
An ordinance appropriating $4,500 from unappropriated reserves in the general fund to various line items in the Circuit Court 6 budget for 2021.
JP Deakins.
Thank you, Judge Wood. This is to buy office furniture for the new judge's office that was added to our circuit court this year. I move to pass.
Got a motion to pass item 16. Is there a second? JP Dennis. Any discussion? Any discussion? JP Madison.
Thank you, Judge. I voted against this last time and I'll be voting against it again. This is a result of our lack of budget discussions from last year. We funded a new position without any discussion, and now we're having to pay more for it that wasn't even anticipated last year. Had there been discussion, we might have considered the real full cost of adding a position. So we just can't add $60,000 a year jobs without talking them through and whether they're necessary. And here we're saying we're worried the sky is falling and that we might have unanticipated coronavirus expenses, but we're just willing to hand out new positions without discussion. I can't in good conscience support this. Thanks.
JP Madison, JP Yanez.
Thank you, Judge. I just want to be transparent with the public of why this was not added to the budget through the process. If we can have that backstory, that would be great.
Any other discussion? All right, citizen comments? Citizen comments, public comments. All right, Ms. Patty, will you take the roll?
Shannon Marty,
Yes.
Sean Simons,
Yes.
Judith Yanez,
No.
Citizen comments,
Patrick Deacons,
Yes.
citizen
Lisa
comments, public comments.
Lisa Ecky,
All right, Ms. Patty, will you take the roll?
Shannon Marty, Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Chandra Washington,
No.
Eva Madison,
No.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
No.
Evelyn Rios Stafford,
No.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Jim Wilson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
No.
Yes.
I have 10 for and 5 against, so this passes.
All right, item 16 passes. Item 17 is on its second reading.
Can we read the correction?
Yes. Item 17 is on the second reading. There's a correction. Council, will you read that correction by title only?
Yes, this is an ordinance appropriating the total amount of $38,389.57 from the general fund to the vehicles line item in the animal shelter budget for 2021. And Treasurer Hill spotted an error in the numbers on line 14 where the ordinance says line item number 35160308 should be 1,00308. And that same correction should be made to line 34. It should be 1,00308.4005.
Okay, it's only on the second reading. Again, JP Deacons, floor is yours.
Judge Wood, I'd like to suspend the rules and take it to third and final reading.
There's a motion on the floor to move to a third and final.
Second.
And a second by
Butch Pond.
Butch Pond. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? JP Madison?
I'm just having a hard time. I couldn't hear what the amendment was. And if it's amended, doesn't it go back to first reading? I'll just say, I think it's pretty clear someone's listening to the meeting like delayed. And the reason we heard JP Washington's name yelled out was because it sounded like Ms. Burnett doing the roll call. And the same thing happened to me. So it's like we keep hearing, like we've heard you, Judge Wood, on rewind. So there's something really going on with this weird with the sound tonight. But I don't know if we could put up the amended version of this ordinance so we can see more clearly what we're being asked to vote on. Because if it's corrected from what we have in our packet, I don't know what that is.
Is the dollar amount the same?
Yes, it's a Scrivener's error.
It's a Scrivener's error. Thank you, JP Madison. Any other discussion? This is a motion to suspend the rules and move to a third and final reading.
Second.
It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, Council, will you read that for the third and final time?
An ordinance appropriating the total amount of $38,389.57 from the general fund to the vehicles line item in the animal shelter budget for 2021.
JP Deacons.
Thank you, Judge Wood. These are funds that the animal shelter collected through donations to purchase a new vehicle. Due to some complications, they didn't get the vehicle purchased before the end of the year. So the money needs to be re-put into their line item so they can facilitate the cost of this vehicle. I think it's important not only for the function of the animal shelter, but to honor the donations that they collected from individuals. So I move passage of item number 17.
Second.
Second.
You have a motion and a second to approve item 17, discussion, JP Madison, and then JP Dennis, I can't see. JP Madison?
Thank you, Judge. I understand that these were donations. My understanding is they were unrestricted donations, and this was just the chosen purpose that the animal shelter chose. I don't know why they would need a transport vehicle right now. I know animal intakes are limited, but I just have to say, court just consistently saying, oh, we have to save money for a rainy day. We might have a tornado. We might have an ice storm. We're unwilling to help people who are homeless right now. But yeah, let's spend $50,000 on a car. And just, if we're worried about saving money, then we really need to be saving money in every instance. And that includes this instance. So I'll be voting no. Thanks.
Thank you, JP Madison. Was that JP? I couldn't see. Dennis? No. JP Yanez?
Thank you. Just going to ask a question. Do we know why the vehicle was chosen? What's the reason they need it? Just going to ask that question. I don't know if it's going to be answered.
Yeah.
Was you transport them up?
JP Yanez, again, you're asking why they're using it?
Why did they use the vehicle like in the middle of the pandemic?
Vehicles, that they transport vehicles, whether to the clinics or up north to drop dogs to different dogs and cats around the different areas.
Do they not judge? Yeah. Do they not have a vehicle currently, or is there an excess amount of animals?
No, but it's an ongoing change. So.
Okay. Thank you, Judge.
Any other discussion? Public comments? Public comments? Ms. Patty?
Shannon Marty,
Yes.
John Simons,
Yes.
Judith Yanez,
Yes.
Patrick Deacons,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Chandra Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
No.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Evelyn Rio Stafford,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Jim Wilson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
Yes.
This ordinance passes.
All right, item 17 passes. Thank you, Ms. Patty. Item 18.
Wrong again, damn it. I did it. You're wrong.
Item 18 is consent agenda items. Ms. Council, will you read each one by title only? We'll do just one at a time.
One at a time.
Okay.
This first one will be 18.1.
18.1.
18.1 is a resolution authorizing the submittal of an application to the Arkansas Unpaved Roads Grant for road improvements on Hamstring Road, which is Washington County 842.
JP Deacons.
Yes, Judge Wood. As you can see, this is a 100% matching grant to make improvements to Hamstring Road for $75,000. I move passage of item 18.1.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to pass 18.1. Any discussion? Any public comments?
Sherry Main.
Ms. Sherry Main.
Yes, Judge. I'm just wondering what section of hamstring road this is. If it's the first section that was just repaved off of Weddington Drive down past the quarry entrance, or if it's another section along hamstring. I'm just not real sure what section is it that's being repaired. If it's going to be pavement. My understanding is there is a repavement already done down past the quarry entrance. So I'm just wondering why there's need of repair for the road on past that. And that was my only question, is just where exactly is this going to be on Hamstring Road? Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry Main. Public comments. Public comments. All right, Ms. Patty, will you take the roll?
Shannon Marty,
Yes.
Sean Simons,
Yes.
Judith Yanez,
Yes.
Patrick Dickens,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Chandra Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Evelyn Rio Stafford,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Jim Wilson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
and Lance Johnson. Lance Johnson,
Yes.
this resolution passes.
All right, item 18.1 passes. Item 18.2. Council, will you read that one by title only?
An ordinance projecting revenues and carryover totaling $4,903,511.26 in various funds and appropriating expenditures of $4,903,511.26 to various funds and budget line items for 2021.
JP Deacons, floor is yours.
Yes, Judge, this is an accounting housekeeping item we do as we roll over the years to close out accounts and reappropriate them. I move passage of item 18.2.
Second?
There's a motion and a second by JP Ecke to pass 18.2. Any discussion? Any discussion?
JP Madison.
JP Madison?
I just wanted to clarify, it was based on something JP Simon said. When a department doesn't spend all their budget from last year, they don't get that money new this year. There's always sort of a closing and a restarting. And that's part of this process. So if someone didn't had money left over last year, they still have to come back and get that this year. Thanks.
Thank you, JP Madison. Any other discussion? Public comments? Public comments? Ms. Patty, will you take the roll?
Shannon Marty,
Yes.
Sean Simons,
Yes.
Judith Yanez,
Yes.
Patrick Deacons,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Chandra Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Evelyn Rio Stafford,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Jim Wilson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
Yes.
This ordinance passes.
Okay, item 18.2 passes. Item 18.3, Council, will you read that one by title only?
An ordinance changing the title and grades of various positions in the county assessor budget for 2021.
JP Ecke, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Judge. My apologies to the board that I was tardy, and I would have put this on the consent agenda, seeing that it passed out of the Personnel Committee. But this is an annual job description evaluation that the Johansson brothers do when they assess different positions in the county. And this is in the assessor's office. And these are just grade changes and title changes. And I move to pass ordinance 18.3.
Second.
There's a motion and a second by JP Lemming to pass 18.3. Any discussion? JP Madison?
I just
and then
wanted,
JP Yanez.
I'm sorry, Judge, the county attorney wasn't present for our committee meetings, and I know there was some debate in personnel about what ordinances needed to go on to the Finance and Budget Committee. My understanding was that anything that's an appropriation ordinance, which this is titled appropriation ordinance, and whether it has a fiscal impact or not, if it changes something in the budget, a job title, anything listed in the budget, it needs to go to both committees. And so I think it's clear that we're all on the same page on what the rule is there, because it was inconsistently followed in the Personnel Committee. And I think this should have gone to the Finance and Budget Committee. And I believe JP Stafford tried to raise that issue and it wasn't addressed. So I don't know that Mr. Lester needs to give clarification tonight, but it'd be helpful for the next meeting that we know the answer to that.
Thank you, JP Madison. JP Yanez?
Thank you, Judge Wood. Just a question. So we're changing the title and a grade of a position. What are the fiscal implications that are possible in the future with this? I've never gotten why we're changing the title and grade and then no raise. So can someone explain that?
Russell's available.
Cesar Hill, are you on? Go ahead, Cesar Hill.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. This is just part of something we do every year. We broke our office in 3 different categories with different departments. When I first was in office, we had several job descriptions that had not been looked at in over a decade. And so what we wanted to do to be equal, we wanted to look at each job description once every 3 years. So we've got a 3-year cycle on different departments and different job ratings. And so this is just a part of an annual thing that we do. This section is mostly kind of our mid-level folks. It's our business personal property, our appraisers that go out in the field, and third one is a research analyst. And so it's just part of something that we'll revalue those. We'll look at those job descriptions again in 3 years. And then next year, or this year, we're actually looking at our chief deputies and a couple of other, I think, a GIS coordinator positions. So it's just part of something we do once, we do it every year, but each department gets looked at once every 3 years, just to make sure that we're up to date on what their abilities were, what their tasks are, what they're actually doing, because sometimes those things change over time. We took it to the Johansson brothers. They look at it, they grade it to make sure. We've brought some in the past where they actually went down a grade or two. It's happened this year. A couple of these that we did went up. The fiscal complications are very minor because it was only 1 grade each. I think the total for this will be under $10,000, and it affects 7 employees with a total of $10,000, less than $10,000.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion?
JP Ecke.
JP Ecke?
Yes, also just to bring up that he had this in his budget, and this was going to be brought up in 2020 in his justification letter. Is that, am I correct, Mr. Hill, when you said?
Correct. Yeah, we wanted to bring this up. We applied it for our 2021 budget. We wanted to bring it up in 2020, but with the COVID and the meeting and everything, it just got pushed back to now. So but originally when I wrote it up, I think one of the letters was dated in September, and I think a couple of the meetings were canceled. And so we didn't want to be the only reason. We thought, well, we'll just carry it into next year. The money's there. I'm not asking for any additional resources to fund this. We just wanted to get everything corrected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pond.
JP Pond?
Yes, Mr. Hill, I wanted to clarify something. Is this going to be less than $10,000, or is it actually going to be, as far as our general fund is concerned, less than 9% of $10,000?
Well, yeah, as far as county general, the impact on the county general would be 9% of 9,700 is about what it's at. It's under 10,000. So yeah, it'd be 9% of that. is what would be affected by county general. The schools will pick up 82%.
Any other discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you, Russell Hill. Public comments? Public comments? Ms. Patty, will you go ahead and take the roll?
Jan and Marty,
Yes.
Sean Simons,
Yes.
Judith Yanez,
Yes.
Patrick Deacons,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Shonda Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Robert Dennis, Suki Hires,
Yes.
Evelyn Rio Stafford,
Yes.
Willie Lemon,
Yes.
Jim Wilson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
Yes.
This ordinance passes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Patty. That was 18.3 that passes. Item 18.4. Council, will you read that one by title only?
An ordinance changing the title and grade of juvenile probation officer 2 / specialized police officer in the Circuit Court 3 budget for 2021.
JP Ecke, the floor is yours.
Yes, Judge. This request was made, I pulled up the sheriff's information instead. And they're just changing the title to juvenile probation officer in the grade. I moved to pass 18.4.
There's a motion to pass 18.4. Is there a second?
Second.
And a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Public comments? Public comments? Ms. Patty, will you take the roll?
Jan and Marty,
Yes.
Sean Simons,
Yes.
Judith Yanez,
Yes.
Patrick Deacons,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Shonda Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Evelyn Rio Stafford,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Jim Wilson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
Yes.
This ordinance passes.
Item 18.4 passes. Thank you, Ms. Patty. Item 18.5. Council, will you read that one by title only?
A resolution authorizing the submittal of an application to the Arkansas Rural Community Grant Program to assist the Round Mountain Volunteer Fire Department in the purchase of gear.
JP Deacons, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Judge Wood. The Round Mountain Volunteer Fire Department has raised these funds and they want to apply for a matching grant to buy some additional bunker gear. I want to thank all of our rural fire departments all across the county, and even the inclement weather these past few days. I know they've all been very busy, and I appreciate all of them. There's a little bit of urgency to this. They need to make this application by the 1st of March, so I hope we can get this passed tonight. I move passage of item 18.5.
Second.
A motion and a second to pass item 18.5. Any discussion? JP Yanez?
I celebrate that we have a grant to purchase this. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion? Any other discussion? Public comments? Public comments? Ms. Patty, will you take the roll?
Jan and Marty,
Yes.
Sean Simons,
Yes.
Judith Yanez,
Yes.
Patrick Deacons,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Shonda Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Evelyn Rio Stafford,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Jim Wilson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
Yes.
This resolution passes.
Thank you, Ms. Patty. Item 18.5 passes. All right, we'll move on to item 19. We're getting this on its first reading. Council, will you read that one by title only?
An ordinance changing the grade of the assistant office manager in the roads department budget for 2021.
It's on its first reading. JP Ecke. If there's no movement, is appropriation? Yes, it is. That's right. Go ahead, JP Ecke.
This is an appropriation, correct?
That's correct.
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and advance it to second reading.
There's a motion on the floor to suspend the rules.
It's an appropriation ordinance.
So it's just, yeah, so you're just going to end up voting on this one, a motion to pass. If it meets your 10, then it passes. If it doesn't, then it'll move on to the second.
I make a motion to pass 19.1.
There's a motion to pass 19.1. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by JP, was that Pond?
Dennis.
JP Dennis. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Public comments? Ms. Patty, will you take the roll?
Shannon Marty,
Yes.
Sean Simons,
Yes.
Judith Yanez,
Yes.
Patrick Dickens,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Chandra Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Evelyn Rio Stafford,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Jim Wilson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
Yes.
This ordinance passes.
Item 19 passes. Thank you, Ms. Patty. Item 20. Council, will you read that one by title only?
An ordinance changing the title of the animal control corporal position to lead civilian animal control officer in the sheriff's budget for 2021, and changing the title of corporal positions to DFC corporal flex slot positions in the sheriff's budget for 2021.
Again, JP Ecke, floor is yours. It's appropriation.
Yes, thank you, Judge. The Sheriff's Department let us know that this is going to reduce their budget, so it's not an increase to their budget. They're just regrading and changing the titles, and I move to pass 20.1.
There's a motion to pass item 20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by JP Dennis. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any public comments? Public comments? Ms. Patty?
Shannon Marty,
Yes.
Sean Simons,
Yes.
Judith Yanez,
Yes.
Patrick Dickens,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Chandra Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Evelyn Rio Stafford,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Jim Wilson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
Yes.
This ordinance passes.
Thank you, Ms. Patty. Item 20 passes. On to item 21. Council, will you read that one by title only?
An ordinance authorizing Washington County to allocate and distribute a portion of its award of coronavirus relief funds from the state of Arkansas for the benefit of county citizens.
JP Madison, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Judge. I actually wanted to read the ordinance. I'll shortcut some of it, but I think that there's a lot of important information to share with the public in the whereas clauses. Whereas in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Congress passed the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, the CARES Act, providing for a coronavirus relief fund that appropriated $150 billion to states, tribal governments, territorial governments, and certain units of local government for reimbursement of certain COVID-19 related expenses. Whereas the funding from the CARES Act was designed to help offset the additional expenses local governments have incurred due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but not to help offset any losses in revenue. Whereas the state of Arkansas received $1,250 million from the federal government under the CARES Act, and whereas Washington County was not eligible to receive direct payment from the federal government under the CARES Act, but was eligible to receive funds from the state of Arkansas from the funds it received under the CARES Act. Whereas the U.S. Department of the Treasury's guidance for recipients of CARES Act funds states, quote, "The Coronavirus Relief Fund is designed to provide ready funding to address unforeseen financial needs and risks created by the COVID-19 public health emergency. For this reason, and as a matter of administrative convenience in light of the emergency nature of the program, a state, territorial, local, or tribal government may presume that payroll costs for public health and public safety employees are payments for services substantially dedicated to mitigating or responding to the COVID-19 public health emergency. Whereas Washington County applied to the state of Arkansas for funds totaling $4,549,991.65 to reimburse the county for payroll expenses for employees at the Washington County Detention Center incurred in 2020 as qualifying payroll costs for public safety employees. Whereas the state of Arkansas awarded Washington County the full amount it requested on or about October 2020. While Washington County did incur some unanticipated expenses relating to the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, all or virtually all of the payroll expenses for employees in the Washington County Detention Center that were used to justify Washington County's request for CARES Act funds were already budgeted for 2020. It did not require the expenditure of additional funds by the county. The CARES Act funds Washington County received from the state remain unspent in the county's Fund 1005. Washington County has an additional $4,500,531.22 in Fund 1001 General Reserves Fund, which are adequate reserves to provide for any unforeseen future expenses. Despite the ongoing pandemic, Washington County's revenue remains strong, with overall sales tax revenue up over 2019 levels. Washington County is concerned, at least I hope we are, about the continuing impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on its citizens, and it wishes to provide financial assistance to its citizens during this challenging time, regardless of their race, color, gender, national origin, religion, sexual orientation, disability, or any other category protected by law. Whereas it's my view that the Quorum Court should think it's the best and highest use of the bulk of the CARES Act funds it receives to provide direct financial assistance to its citizens, recognizing that the purpose of these funds was not to provide financial assistance to the county for future expenses unrelated to the COVID-19 pandemic, but to provide assistance now during the pandemic. The ordinance authorizes the judge to spend the CARES Act funds in the manner set in this ordinance, much like the judge has done with the $7.1 million for housing relief. He's authorized to execute all agreements between the county and the approved recipient for the purpose of expending the funds. And specifically, it's broken down into $1.2 million first category to aid small businesses with locations exclusively in Washington County who've suffered financially. It's my understanding that folks have spoken at least with the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce, and they would be willing to assist the county in doing that. To provide hunger relief, an additional $1.2 million to be provided to nonprofit food banks like Genesis Church and some of the others that have spoken out. I know that there's a number of churches that have been involved in food bank efforts. And then $1.2 million to provide financial assistance for residents who have lost their homes or have experienced financial difficulties related to homelessness. It sets a deadline to distribute the funds by April 15th and asks for reports from the judge in both March and April. The distribution of these funds shall be made in such a manner that all county citizens have the opportunity to apply for and access the funds, including the Latino and Marshallese communities in Washington County. This shall include providing the information in languages other than English as needed, and making information on fund distribution available to those who do not have computer or internet access. I know that this topic is incredibly controversial. I'm surprised it has been, but we have so many members of the public who have begged us to talk about this, and much to their disappointment, the agenda item that JP Washington included on the finance agenda was very quickly shut down. The committee would not take additional public comment, and there were numerous citizens waiting to talk about this. So I put this on the agenda so that there could be a healthy discussion of this issue. Do I think this is the perfect ordinance? No, I don't. But no one has come back to me since it's been on the agenda to say there's a different way to do it or a better way to do it. I know that Seven Hills Homeless Center, I know that churches, I know that folks are interested in seeing this money distributed. It does not distribute all of the money. It leaves almost $1 million to the county. What I have a hard time with is the fact that we all know what the CARES Act was for. It was for coronavirus. The only reason that we were able to get the $4.5 million that we got quickly and easily was because, for an administrative convenience, the Treasury Department allowed us to submit salaries. No one in this court can sit here and tell me that we actually had $4.5 million in additional expenses from COVID, because our budget was close to where it should have been. I've repeatedly been asked, what were the county's actual new COVID expenses? No one's been able to answer that. I've heard the sheriff's office had expenses. They got them reimbursed through a different grant fund. So while I hope that we can have a robust discussion of this and decide quickly, not push it off to another meeting, not wait until summer to talk about it, but to talk about how to put some of these monies to use. Because I don't think this court should, in good faith, take $4.5 million of taxpayer money that was given to the county for COVID expenses and save it for a future tornado. And if we're going to save it for an ice storm, I invite you to look outside your window right now. We are in an emergency. We have had several days of freezing temperatures, sub-zero wind chills. Our neighbors and our community citizens need this help now. The emergency is now. For us to just say that we're going to put this in reserves and save it because something else might come up, that's just a total misuse of this money. So I'm asking my colleagues to reach into their hearts and say, we can afford to spend the COVID CARES money on the people who are suffering from COVID-related financial distress. If you don't want to spend it all, offer another solution. 900,000 stays with the county. 1.2 million goes directly to small businesses who need it, because those small businesses and their families and their employees are suffering too. So let's not delay this discussion. Find it in your hearts to share this money that we should not save for a rainy day. If there's a tornado or an ice storm, FEMA will come in. I know they're not fast, but just like the federal government was there for us with COVID, we can count on the federal government to be there if Washington County has some unforeseen disaster in the future. The disaster is here. What this is given for is clear, and I would move to pass item 21.
There's a motion to pass item 21.
Second.
A second by JP Hires. Discussion, JP Deacons, and then JP Wilson.
I'd like to start out by saying I really think some of the discussion on this and some of the intents got kind of out of hand very initially. This is to reimburse the county for the expenses that we've encountered in COVID. Not all those expenses have been undertaken yet. We had a lot of elected officials last year, all of them got together and cut their budgets. They did a very good job watching their spending, and they put off things like capital improvements. We have a new circuit judge that's not in the JDC building. We were going to add on to that. What I'm saying is COVID has had a lot of impacts in a lot of different ways on our county. I think it's a little presumptuous for us to think that we're out of the woods and we need to expend these funds all right now. I would like to be very deliberate and dedicated with what we're going to do with these funds, how we're going to spend them. I would like to discuss with our elected officials what they're seeing on the ground. I don't think that we've done a thorough job with that yet. I'd like to understand more about what they're seeing, what they're expecting. I have expenses that I think we've incurred, such as body scanners, that we can't even get support for because I think we're so blinded by these other uses that people want to lobby for. A lot of discussion needs to happen on this, and I think we need to do it in the budget committee where we can outlook on a lot of things, see where we're at for the year. I make a motion we refer this to the budget committee so it can get the proper vetting to come back up to the full quorum court.
Second that motion.
A motion to refer to budget committee and a second by JP Wilson. Discussion?
I have a parliamentary inquiry.
Yeah, go ahead, JP Madison.
So this was already placed on this agenda pursuant to county ordinance. And so I don't know how it can be pulled back to a committee where the sponsor isn't even a member. I don't think that's proper. It's before this body pursuant to county ordinance. I don't know what the basis is for referring it back to committee. I don't think there's a basis for that.
Is there anything?
It's just Robert's rules. The main motion is to pass, and a motion to commit or refer is a subsidiary motion that can be
Okay,
considered.
so the main motion then will still stand. Discussion on the main motion.
No, we're on the motion to refer.
You got, all right, so.
I'm sorry. I don't think that's correct because Robert's rules can't trump an ordinance. And this ordinance is here pursuant to the 2017 ordinance that was passed. I can provide you the site.
There's no ordinance that says that if it's put on a committee, though, it cannot be referred to. If it's put on an agenda, it cannot be referred to a committee. So there's an ordinance that allows a JP to put something on the agenda without it going to a committee, but there's no ordinance that says once that happens, then you're barred from sending it to a committee.
But my point, Mr. Lester, is that the Robert's rules outside of ordinances do not trump ordinances. I do not consent for my ordinance to go. I'll put it back on the agenda next month and I'll keep doing it.
I'm saying that part again.
And I've been stripped from the budget committee.
JP Madison, say that part again. You went fast and I could say it again.
This ordinance is before this body pursuant to county ordinance, and Robert's rules cannot trump county ordinance because the ordinances prevail. If we spell out a different procedure from Robert's rules, then that procedure governs. Robert's rules cannot supersede where we have decided to go away from Robert's rules. This ordinance is properly here before this body. And I'm the sponsor and they're referring it to a committee I'm not on. So I just can't, I have the right to bring this ordinance forward. So.
Okay, thank you, JP Madison. Parliamentarian, what is your read on it?
My only take is that I don't think that that we are superseding an ordinance. There's an ordinance that allows a JP to bring and put an ordinance on the quorum court agenda without it going to committee. But to do so, they have to send that at least 5 days in advance. Nothing in that ordinance then prohibits that from being referred to a committee. It's just that it didn't have to originate in a committee, which is what all the other ordinances have to do in order to go to the quorum court.
Mr. Judge, I'd like a citation for authority to that because that's not what the county code says.
From the Robert rules or from county?
From county code, please. Can I have the code site so I can check it?
Sure. I thought you said you had it. It's the 2017 ordinance. There's nothing on that ordinance that says that once it goes to the quorum court, it thereafter cannot be referred to a committee. That's my only thing is there's nothing that prohibits the quorum court from referring something back to a committee.
Well, let me ask this.
Where's the procedure in county ordinance? Where's the procedure in county ordinance to refer something?
Well, you've adopted that by Robert's rules.
But that's what I'm saying is where we've decided to deviate from Robert's rules with a procedure spelled in our ordinance, the ordinance governs. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right, and I'm saying that this ordinance is not in conflict with Robert's rules.
Yes, it is, because it expressly provides for a way to have things come directly to the quorum court and circumvent a committee.
But under that logic, then you could say, well, you can't dismiss it or do anything because I put it on the agenda, and I don't think that was the intent. But Judge, this is your
Yeah,
call.
so I'm asked this to JP Deacons. I've asked for the referral. One, hearing the discussion about the county code as well as the ordinance, would you change that? And if not, would you have the sponsor obviously to speak to and be working on this that you're referring back to the budget committee? With the JP Deacons.
I'm here. My intent is not to,
pardon me?
sorry, my intent is not to limit discussion or input from any, for the public or JP. I just feel like it's more appropriate in the budget committee. So that we can assess all the other things we're gonna do this for this year.
But how do you address, and again, the question was, if I'm not on the committee, how do I get my sponsored ordinance discussed?
I'm sorry?
If I'm not on the committee, how do I get my sponsored ordinance discussed? Meaning, will you have JP Madison lead or work through that discussion on the ordinance?
I don't have any issue with JP Madison presenting to the Finance and Budget Committee.
JP Madison?
Well, with all due respect to JP Committee, they completely shut off public comment on this very issue at last week's meeting. I wouldn't have had. I'm sorry, I have the floor.
JP Madison, JP, talk to me.
I have the floor, Mr. Chair.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
If this.
What's the point of order? Who called the point of order?
I called the point of order. I did not shut down public comment. The public comment period expired. The committee has the pleasure of extending public comment.
This is not a valid point of order.
All right.
He just is disagreeing with me.
Okay, direct your comment to me, Patrick, and then JP Deacons, then JP Madison.
I'm sorry, Judge, what did you say?
Okay,
go ahead,
thank you.
JP Madison.
So had the committee been able to hear public comment and have a robust discussion like JP Washington and JP Yanas wanted, I wouldn't have had to put this together, this ordinance together, and circumvent Mr. Deacon's committee. But that's exactly the circumstance that he presented to us. And that's exactly what the county code allows. And I would point out that section 2-31 that of our code that adopts Robert's rules says that except where they are in conflict with the general laws of the county and the state. So the ordinance allowing this agenda item to come directly to this court is what prevails. And a subsidiary motion that's pursuant to Robert's rules is not proper. And I will also say, this is nothing but trying to delay this discussion further. There are deadlines to spend this money. There are needs in our community, and all JP Deacons wants to do is just slow this down even more, drag it on in committee, drag it on into April and May. And that's not acceptable for the citizens of Washington County. You, Judge, should allow this ordinance to be voted up or down tonight. And if it fails because people are compassionless, then that's the way it fails. But I do not want it going to committee, and I do not respect the lack of a budget committee of the whole and the way it's been conducted so far.
Thank you, JP Madison. JP Yanas.
Thank you, Judge Wood. Yeah. So I have a valid concern, Judge Wood. I was asked by a member of our Marshallese community to speak on their behalf based on what they saw at the Finance and Budget Committee last week. And so that's a valid concern. I know it wasn't the chairman's fault that the comments were shut down, but it was just issues that were being brought up about marginalized communities and the conversation shut down. And so valid concern that people do not feel comfortable speaking. And I would rather have public comments in this full quorum court than go through that again. And that's something we have to fix in the future. We can't just say, we will open to public comments because that precedent was set last week, and that is so sad. It actually hurt my heart having to speak for this person that does not feel they have a voice in this quorum court because of last week. I just wanted to bring up that concern, Judge. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I have a point of order.
Point of order, JP Deacons.
I would like you as chair to try to limit other JPs from explaining my intentions. That's not right. Against decorum, and I'd appreciate you keeping better order in the meeting. I think I have a motion on the second. I would like a judgment from the parliamentarian and a vote.
JP, parliamentarian.
Well, I think, like I've said, the ordinance that was passed in 2017 allows for something to be put on a quorum court agenda without going to a committee and without having to suspend the rules to put it on the quorum court agenda. Therefore, it serves its function, and it happened in this instance. Now, there's no bar, in my opinion, to then something being referred to a committee, because the purpose of that was to get something onto an agenda without having to suspend the rules based on the language of the ordinance in 2017. But there was no language that barred something then being referred to a committee. And that's just my opinion on it.
Thank you, parliamentarian. JP Madison.
I just wanted to read what the ordinance says, because this is an alternative to something going to committee. It says, all general ordinances not presented to the county attorney by the member of the quorum court introducing that ordinance in rough draft form at least 5 working days prior to the date of the meeting at which the member of the quorum court wishes to introduce the ordinance shall be referred to a standing committee. So how, by following that, is it proper to say it's going to be referred to committee anyway? This ordinance that JP Washington helped edit in the meeting that was in January of 17 was specifically allowing an ordinance to circumvent the committee process. That's what the intent of this ordinance is. Robert's rules cannot overrule this.
If that's the case, then there's no point in having committees, because all ordinances can just be presented and they can never be referred to a committee, and there would be no point in having a committee.
Well, that's the way the ordinance was drafted. I wasn't here for that meeting, so I didn't vote on it, but that's the way the final ordinance that was signed by the judge and filed in the county clerk's office, that's what it says. If it's not a good ordinance, then amend that one. But I followed the procedure for this ordinance to be presented at this meeting and to specifically circumvent going to a committee. That ordinance passed by this body 3 years or 4 years ago is what trumps Robert's rules. It specifically says that. If you combine that with a reading of 2-31, that's the procedure that we all are living under.
I'm gonna go with the main motion. The second will be what happens after. So we're going to go ahead and continue the discussion on the main motion. Any other discussion on the main motion? JP Wilson?
Yes. We have $7.1 million that the county was successful in obtaining for rental assistance. There have been some people who have alleged that the $7.1 million is inadequate to cover the needs of this county. I don't think there's any way that anybody can demonstrate a hard and fast way of showing that that is not adequate. So until the $7.1 million is exhausted or close thereto, I don't believe that we need to be trying to disperse anything from 5 for this purpose. In addition, the $4.5 million is intended to reimburse the county for expenditures we had in 2020 related to COVID. And just because we used a simpler way to apply using salaries doesn't in any way diminish the fact that we did have extraordinary expenses in 2020. I don't see where I'm unaware of this county having been in the social support welfare business in the past. And I don't think we have a revenue stream to support that going forward. It is entirely possible with this large amount of money that Congress is talking about doing right now, that there may be more money that comes to the county, whether we should spend it or not, before the $7 million is used. And those are the reasons that I will be voting no on this ordinance.
Thank you, JP Wilson. JP Hires and then JP Duncan.
Judge, I just have a couple of points. One, I keep hearing that the county money was to reimburse expenditures, and this is the second time I've asked, please show the receipts for those expenditures. If we're going to continue to say that this money is to reimburse things that we have already spent money on, why aren't we seeing that data? The other thing I want to say is the 7.1 million does not address food insecurity, and it does not address the small businesses in our county that have been struggling. All the people are watching. They are listening to us right now. We are letting them down. We're letting them down. Thank you.
JP Duncan. Thank you, JP Hires. JP Duncan.
I wanted to reiterate a point made in the Finance and Budget Committee meeting that, again, these funds are reimbursement for incurred expenses. These are previous expenses that we had to take on and reimbursed for. So this is not excess funds to then go and some other things. So we deferred capital projects. The county got creative, and I'm appreciative of all the elected officials for doing so. I think what this boils down to is I've received hundreds of emails on this and several phone calls. This is just a disagreement on the purpose of government. So I believe there's two purposes of government. That's to maintain law and order, and that's necessary shared services, which include basics like roads. And I think other people believe that the government should do everything for people, and government is almost held to this level of it's going to be a savior. At the end of the day, all this money is coming from us, the taxpayers. So every dollar we spend unwisely and that we go out and spend on things that are not law and order and basic necessary government services, that to me is outside of the realm of government. So my hope is that this court would be wise with these funds and instead lower the millage rate next year, lower taxes, put more money back in the pockets of Washington County citizens so that they can go and do what they need to do and make their own decisions, and they don't have government making decisions on their behalf.
Thank you, JP Duncan. JP Real Stafford, and then JP Hecky.
Thank you, Judge. Yeah, I want to just, I know, I think sometimes we get lost in the fact that we are in a once in a century pandemic and economic crisis. This is probably the one and only time in our lifetimes that we're going to have to deal with an emergency situation. This is an extraordinary situation. People are hurting right now through no fault of their own. And I hope my colleagues are able to see that this is not a moment for business as usual. I just joined this, got sworn in and joined this quorum court in January, but the previous quorum court passed a balanced budget at the end of the year in December. And and I agree with doing this, it put 4.5 million into reserves. And there's another million on top of that unallocated in the general fund. And this money is completely separate from that. And I support putting more money into reserves, some more money into reserves. But I think that it is immoral to put the entire amount of this money into reserves for some unspecified future emergency. We've gotten, an avalanche of emails about this, as my colleague just mentioned. A lot from just our ordinary constituents, but we've also heard from our agencies. We heard from Seven Hills. We heard from the Economic Opportunity Agency. We heard from SOAR. We heard from Genesis Church, and we heard from them again tonight. the folks who fill the little free pantries, and all of them are seeing an increase in need because of the pandemic, because of what this CARES Act money is supposed to be used for. No, I haven't followed every single reason of every single thing that got cut last year, but I do question whether some of the belt tightening that happened and whether some of the things that happened weren't possibly things that needed to happen anyway. You know, I understand that every department you know, did some cuts, but you know, I still have not seen a list of things that need to be done going forward. I also, you know, am very concerned about all the folks in our community who are sort of living on the edge, people who are not homeless right now, but on the verge of homelessness or on the verge of not being able to pay their rent. And, you know, we saw that revenues at our budget meeting last week, that revenues are up, but we don't want to imagine how much further they would be up if we weren't depressing our own tax base. And my concern is that if we don't help people on the front end, we may be paying more for it on the back end in terms of lost tax revenue as people slip into poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, JP Stafford. JP Ecke, and then JP Simons.
I want to rebut the purpose for the ordinance, the justification that JP Madison is offering. The purpose, the first one is to aid small businesses in locations exclusively in Washington County who have suffered financially and whose employees have suffered financially as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. I disagree with that justification in that the Small Business Administration, federal government, through local agencies, banks, Arvest Bank, Security, United Bank, offered all businesses, PPP loans. They needed to apply for it. They would even help you fill it out and turn it in to the Small Business Administration for payroll, for rent, for utilities, et cetera, et cetera. There was a lot of money available to small businesses. That was round one. Recently, there is a round two PPP loan. This time, small businesses had to justify the loan application by proving in any particular quarter that you were actually down 25% in business, in revenues. And if you could justify that 25%, then you could apply for the second round of PPP. Now, the first round, after you applied for it, you also applied for PPP forgiveness. 100% of that loan is forgiven if you applied for the forgiveness loan. So to say that small businesses are suffering financially and their employees, they have been given 2 rounds of PPP funding from our federal government. So in my opinion, the argument supporting the small businesses is invalid. They are already getting support, as are the employees that work for them. Number 2, now this one's a little precarious in that you can't, it's like a cloud, you're trying to pin down a cloud. There is a moratorium from the CDC, that an eviction moratorium that's been extended to March 31st, 2021. When you read it, it's a temporary order that you cannot evict, but you are still liable and responsible for those rents. So saying that people are getting thrown out with all their children out in the snow by these heartless landlords, I'm sorry, that is an exaggerated, emotional statement that is not evidence-based. Now, are people hurting? Oh my goodness, yes. I know. I work with them. And to say that we are heartless and are doing nothing but sitting on this nest egg is, in my opinion, a cheap shot at the integrity of those of us that sit on this court. The other article number 2, article number 3 that is written in here is an overreach of our constitutional capabilities and responsibilities. It says, Article 2, the distribution of these funds shall be made in such a manner that all county citizens have an opportunity to apply for it, including Latinos and Marshallese. Now, I am a Hispanic woman, and I was the first Hispanic woman to be voted for on this court. And to be accused of saying that we are marginalizing our Marshallese and the Latino community is an insult. And I do ask for an apology, and I ask that those kind of comments not find their way in this court, Judge, because as a minority, and for that to be a discussion, is not germane to the agenda. Moving on to Article 3 says that the county judge shall distribute these funds as provided in this ordinance, and it puts a moratorium on April 15th, 2021. We as a quorum court do not have those constitutional capabilities or authority. We are under the Constitution, and this violates the Constitution of the state of Arkansas. We cannot dictate to the executive what they can and what they can't do, and a timeline. So Article number 4 says they must report back to the quorum court by March 2021. That is the same argument. We cannot do this. This is not our authority. This is far-reaching. And I believe, in my opinion, that the author knows this. So Article 2, 3, 4, and 5 should be struck because this is not what the quorum court's responsibilities are. We are to appropriate funds, and then we give that out to the elected officials and the departments for their use. The oversight, the other point, Judge, we are not the oversight committee. The oversight is done through the treasurer who pays the bills, and he looks at every single bill that comes through the county. And it's also done by the comptroller, who makes sure that every line item is spent exactly the way we, the quorum court, passed in our budget. Third oversight is the state audit. They audit our budget. They audit each department to make sure that we legally use the money properly. So for those reasons, Judge, I know and I understand the articles and the argument on this, I rebut them and I refuse them. And frankly, it's false, and we can't do that. It is beyond our capabilities. Thank you, Judge.
JP Yanez, and then JP Simon, and then JP Madison.
Judge Woods, JP Simons.
Washington.
JP Simons had his hand up before me, and I just want to recognize that.
JP Simon, if you want to go ahead, JP Simon.
Thank you, JP Yanez. A couple of points, many of which have already been talked about tonight, and again, as a new JP, thank you for this discourse, and thank you for keeping it somewhat within the quorum. A couple of points, and I won't reiterate the PPP rounds for small businesses, the stimulus checks for individuals, block fund grants for organizations, all those things aside. I want to start off with my first point, and really just a point of education. I agree with the heart of this ordinance. As JP Madison said, if she doesn't believe this is fully formed and perfect, and I'm sure if she had more time, she would continue polishing this. And I would like to see kind of a final polished version. One thing I will say is not passing this ordinance tonight doesn't mean that organizations in need can't come to this quorum court and ask for assistance. This isn't a do or die, 4.5 or nothing. We need to get away from this dichotomy of we have to spend all of this money tonight or as soon as possible or never at all. So let's make sure we keep that in perspective. Something that hasn't been talked about and was honestly my first concern that came to mind was this most recent census. I have some concerns about what the financial state of the county and our cities will look like once we get the census numbers back. More so for the counties than the municipalities. I don't think it's any surprise that the expectation is the services and the level of services that we produce and provide to the county will maintain, if not grow. And yet, the predictions that I've seen is that the census numbers will show a diminished tax basis. So what that means to me is that we as a county will be expected to perform and provide the same services on less money. And so while things look great now, and we do have reserves, and we have been good stewards of the finances up to this point, I don't know what that's going to look like moving forward. I don't think anybody does. And so it is hard for me to speak to the financial position of the county and give away money that may desperately be needed to maintain those services moving forward. It is my constitutional obligation to make sure that those services are provided and funded. It's also a moral obligation for me personally to see that my community members, my neighbors, my friends, my colleagues are taken care of. And to that point, the need in our community is very real. It may have resulted from COVID, but it has been exacerbated by the winter weather and other issues. The longer we wait, the more that need grows. I understand that need is not equally distributed among demographics and marginalized groups. It's a mess. Kind of going back to the two ordinances earlier tonight, I feel like the county needs to address on a decisive and impactful way these needs. I don't think it's with this $4.5 million. I don't think that this is the pot of money. And my concern is if we, in our haste to provide that necessary relief to the community that we're seeing, no doubt about that, no one should be arguing that. If you argue that there's a need, I would love to visit with you because I will refute that all day long. My concern is if we, in our haste to provide that relief, spend these funds and then we receive future funds, which I believe are possible. You know, I think there are avenues, other grants, maybe even future funds that are coming down the pipe that may be earmarked for food and housing insecurities. If we rush out and spend this $4.5 million on those things, and then we get another pot of money, much like the 7.1 that was earmarked for rental assistance, then we've spent all that money and not have any other unrestricted funds to be able to do other things with. That's difficult to say, let's sit on our hands and wait. I understand that's not necessarily what everybody wants to hear, but again, being a good steward of our finances and making sure that we're being, having that oversight and that responsible fiscal, I have some concerns about what the future looks like.
Is that it, JP Simons?
It is. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. Let me go to JP Washington before we go to you, JP Yanez. She has not spoken on the topic yet. And then we'll go to you, JP Yanez, and we'll wrap it with JP Madison.
Thank you, Judge Wood. I would just like to say that we have established that there is definitely a need in our community. We have established that we definitely have the means to do something about that need. And I have to say that I am a little disappointed because while we know that we should not spend all $4.5 million, we also know that it doesn't help our neighbors if we dig our heels in and point out every reason why we should do nothing. It was very disheartening for me to see at the beginning of the winter weather for our neighbors to go out and fill up these little pantries. And almost as soon as they filled the pantries up, the food was gone. There is a horrible and very terrible food insecurity problem here. And if we don't believe that we need to help small businesses, that's one thing. If we don't believe that we need to help people pay their rent because there will be other funds available, that's one thing. But we cannot ignore that there is a huge food insecurity problem. And a lot of those people that are affected by it are children who they have no control over whether or not their parents are able to buy food. So I just wish that as a body, that we can become more solutions oriented. So instead of trying to pick everything apart and figure out why we can't or why we should do one extreme or the other extreme, why can't we meet in the middle? Even if we were to take $100,000 of this $4.5 million, that's only 2%. And $100,000 will put a lot of food in a lot of food pantries. But we're spending our time arguing and nitpicking. And we need to do something as a body that we have within our power to do to help our neighbors. So I would just really wish that the tone of our conversation would become, what can we do instead of what we shouldn't do or what may happen? We have a need right now. And that's all I wanted to say.
JP Washington, JP Yanez, and then JP Madison.
Thank you, Judge Wood. And I know we're not supposed to name JPs by name, but JP Simons, thank you so much for this conversation. I'm actually a leader in outreach in the community. I am called upon right now for the mass vaccination. We are looking at every little barrier of this community, and I'm proud to be part of conversations all week long where people are honoring and trusting my insight. And then I come to the Quorum Court and I'm like, I don't know what to say. I don't know where to hit the middle. I wish we could have these conversations. And JP Simons, thank you so much for giving me some hope. I appreciate you. But tonight, Judge, I've been getting phone calls and conversations from our marginalized community members. And first of all, I want to say something. I am a light-skinned Latina. Yes, I can speak for Latinos, but I myself have privilege. So when I speak, I'm not speaking for myself. I'm listening to the stories within our community. I do this every day. Throughout this pandemic, I've been walking side by side with some difficult stories. You know, these are not my stories. These are the needs within the community. And it wears down on you, but that allows us as a community with this insight to have conversations, you know, but I can't do that here in the Quorum Court, because once you bring up race, once you bring up anything about marginalized communities, you know, people get uncomfortable. And it's not about that. We are elected officials that should be in tune to every aspect of our community, every pain of our community, not just our traditions and our foods, but walking next by our neighbors and, you know, their pain. It's uncomfortable. But tonight, Marshallese community member, and this, you know, of course, being Latina, I have to really be in tune to the needs of other communities. And so he wanted me to say that he did not feel comfortable coming to the court. He is not in my district. He's in a district in Springdale. And I normally refer these to other JPs and, you know, whatever district they are. He did not feel comfortable me redirecting him to his JP. I wanted to bring that up. You know, this is why it's important for us to have these conversations, to open up the space to make it comfortable for other communities, marginalized especially, to feel comfortable coming to us, you know, in uncomfortable times. That really lets us know if we're in tune. So what he wanted to say is that during COVID, he had been working. He had been working and it hit hard in our Marshallese community. that if you know the Marshallese community, and I'm learning this about them, they're community oriented. So it's not just the children that are born from them, it's the whole community. And so once that community started getting left and right, there went their families. You know, they no longer had a support system. And I really like just listening to what he said. It's like they didn't realize until they had no one that they had no dignity. And think about a man trying to raise his children and not have dignity, then going to a job that he's going to get COVID again. You know, like there's no way out for that community. And I want you to sit with that, because outside of the Marshallese community, and we love our Marshallese community, they don't have us. And we're saying government is not a part of us. Now, I received a call from a JP about the Marshallese community. Are we not able to speak on their needs, on their behalf, to get into what they need? And this is one of the hardest things, because if you're not in tune to the Marshallese community right now, you don't know what's happening with landlords. They are evicting Marshallese communities left and right. They're no longer wanting to take any rental assistance. It is a real issue. So what they're now wanting to do is move out of Arkansas. And if you realize, Springdale, Arkansas is one of the top states that has our Marshallese community. They're wanting to move out of here by the way they're being treated. And now think about the example we're setting up in the Quorum Court. We don't want to speak about their needs. We don't want to speak about, you know, so let's think about that too. You know, let's have those honest conversations of what's happening to our community members. We are elected officials. To the point now, and I'm really proud of him, during the winter storm, he was so desperate mentally, like he didn't find a way out. He went to help neighbors during this winter storm to feed them, to bring them warmth. This is a man in need. How many of us got out of a comfortable house to go do that? I don't know many of us on the court. You know, I sat in my comfy house right now donating money because that's all I could do. So he really wants us to go out there and understand the needs of the communities, especially our Marshallese community. And hopefully I did justice to what he told me to say. I didn't want to speak for myself. I wanted to bring the voice because let's be conscious. Our marginalized communities, and if you notice the audience that speaks does not feel comfortable coming to speak to the Quorum Court. We have not created that precedence. And so when we speak about this stuff, let's just be careful what we say, because we're not making community members feel welcome. And then when we don't make them feel welcome, then they think that we're neglecting their needs, especially not being able to have these open conversations. So thank you.
JP Yanez, JP Madison, and then we'll go to public comments.
Thank you, Judge. I also wanted to echo what JP Yanez said. I appreciate those of you who have expressed open-mindedness and willing to consider these issues. As JP Simons repeated, it was not a perfect ordinance. It's what I was able to draft the Wednesday after the Finance and Budget Committee meeting last week. And I did my best in that time to make sure I could get it on an agenda so that people could have their voices heard. I will say that we had $4.5 million before last year's budget, and we had $4.5 million after last year's budget. So I'm not seeing how there were missed capital projects or delayed expenses. I've yet to see that. I do think that we deserve to know from all of our elected officials what they consider to be their COVID expenses. My understanding is that when Benton County totaled theirs up, they were about $500,000. I don't think we could come close to getting to $1 million. We certainly couldn't get to 4.5, but we need that information. If that's going to be an obstacle to this discussion, we need that information and we need it quickly. If you'd rather save this money for a rainy day, I'm not going to change your mind. If you'd rather save this money to cut taxes, I'm not going to change your mind. But I will say that a one-time deposit into our bank account of $4.5 million is not going to sustain a prolonged tax reduction. All it's going to do is give probably those of us on this call less than $100 break per year. It's going to give the really big property owners in the county a break. But for the average citizen, especially renters, it won't mean anything. And so saving this for the future or saving it to cut taxes, that just doesn't even make economic sense. The PPE loans, round one ran out in about 13 days. And I think that the second round has so many strings attached. There are a lot of problems with getting that. My goal with the small business component of this was to provide grants, not loans, not forgivable loans that had restrictions on them. But I'll say this, I'll close out. I brought this ordinance forward because a lot of my constituents were very passionate about this issue. And I think we deserve to have a discussion about it. If your obstacle is that it's got my name on it, or that it's got a Democrat sponsor on it, get over that. I'll take my name off. Find it in your heart to help people. If you're willing to consider something else, don't vote no tonight, vote abstain, just so the public can see that we do care and that we're not all about lowering taxes. But I will say this, I will absolutely not apologize to anyone for bringing this ordinance forward. This ordinance needed to be heard and it needed to be discussed. And I look forward to a robust discussion from the public on why we should pass this. And if we don't pass it tonight, why we should not forget about this issue and it should stay at the top of our agenda for future purposes. Thank you, Judge.
JP Madison, thanks. JP Dennis, if you make it quick, I want to move on to the public comments.
Yes, I can make it pretty quick. I wasn't going to say anything, didn't really want to. And I understand a lot of this, but I want to speak for those who have mortgages. We talk about renters all the time. What about the people that were getting ready to make renters because they can't afford to keep their mortgage? Are we going to give them some money? Do they not deserve some of this as well? I know a lot of people, so I can speak for a lot of people as well. I know a lot of people in my community, and they're not making their house payments, so they're going to lose their houses. Then they'll have to rent. And gosh, they're going to dread that since we have such terrible landlords in Northwest Arkansas. I can't believe that anybody wants to move here. It's such a bad place. But the other thing is, there's so much social money coming down and coming from so many different places. And yet, what I see that disappointed me so much was, they always say follow the money. How many of these nonprofits take administrative fees like FHA and Springdale Housing Authority, or Fayetteville Housing Authority and Springdale Housing Authority? There's $750,000. Nobody said a word about that tonight. How about that back? And I don't know anyone that's not suffering some. Gasoline prices are going up. If you want the money, ask for the National Guards to go home from Washington, D.C., take that money and you can buy them all a house. There'd be enough money to buy everybody that's homeless in Northwest Arkansas a house. And the other challenge I'll put out is the church I attend, and I won't name their names because they wouldn't want the publicity, but they built a single parent mother a house. It was a tiny house, but they built it for her. Every church in Northwest Arkansas would build a tiny house for someone who wouldn't have very many homeless people either. So I'm not sure that the Quorum Court needs to be in the social service business. And as far as food, SNAP, I didn't think it'd gone away. I thought it was still there. And trust me, I've worked in the grocery business all my life, and I've seen the abuse, and I've seen the use of it. And so I know what I'm talking about there. People are not starving to death that are on SNAP. They may not be spending it wisely, and they may be trading it for things that they shouldn't be trading their SNAP for. And I also have been to Seven Hills. Their pantry was full when I was in there at the end of last week. And they even told me, oh, we get 2 pallets of food every week. And I said, well, that's great. I didn't tell him who I was. I was just dropping off a donation to him. And, they had lots of food there. And he said, we get lots of food every week. The other thing he said to me was this. I said, all these people that are standing out here homeless? He said, yes, they are. And I said, well, I thought that we had rental money for them. Why are they not renting? Why do you not find them a place? We've got vouchers for lots of houses and lots of
JP Dennis,
rental.
JP Dennis, you gonna finish up there?
Yeah, I might just ramble on, but I've got one more point to make. He said, we have people that are homeless that we could put in a place right now today that will not take it. They will not take it. And I said, well, you're still welcome to my donation, and I hope it helps some of those guys out that don't want to take it. But all of us should do what we can and when we can do it. But you know what? If you send everybody equal amount of this money, it'd be $11.25 per person in Washington County. Thank you.
Thank you, JP Dennis. JP Rio, Stafford, quickly, if you would.
Thanks. I just wanted to make a quick clarification because we've heard this twice now, claiming that the Fayetteville Housing Authority is taking $700,000 in admin fees, which is actually just not true. Number one, we know that both of the housing authorities so far have only been given $1.5 million. And number two, what's actually happening with that treasury money is that 90% of it has to be used for direct rent relief. And the other 10% can be used optionally for admin fees and a combination of housing stability support services. So basically services that are related to keeping people in their homes. And every dollar has to be accounted for. So I don't know where this talking point came from that $700,000 is going into admin fees. It's simply not there. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Let's go to public comments. Ms. Phyllis Tabella,
Yes, sir. Thank
you're
you.
recognized.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. First
And
of
where
all,
you from?
hello?
Phyllis Tabella, you're recognized. Tell us who you are and where you're from.
Phyllis Tivella from Prairie Grove, Arkansas.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of things. First of all, thank you for JP Madison for bringing this ordinance to the Quorum Court. It's a long overdue. Couple of things. There's actually a listing of what can and cannot be used, what this money can and cannot be used for. Line budget items, for example, that would normally fall in a budget, they don't qualify. The other thing is that I want to make sure you understand is that you can't store this money. It's in the Federal Register. It's exactly, if you do not use the money, you have to send it back. So this idea of holding the $4.5 million as part of your rainy day fund, you are not allowed to do that with this money. So it needs to be spent. It's supposed to be spent on COVID-related expenses, body scanners, body cams. You could probably make an argument for it, but that's not really the spirit of this money. The spirit of this money is to help people who have been directly affected by the pandemic. And, Mr. Dennis is correct. There are people who have mortgage issues that could also benefit from this. There are people in Prairie Grove, I'm sure Mr. Lemming has heard of them, that, I'm on a book Facebook page that every day someone is saying, do you have a place I can get firewood? Do you know where I can get a heater for my frozen pipes? And these are homeowners. So they don't have a landlord who may or may not care to go to about these things. They're trying to do it themselves. And if you understand that some of these people are in their starter homes, so no, they may not be the fanciest homes with the best insulation and the best wrapping for their pipes. So they need assistance. And $4.5 million could be distributed in an equitable fashion by, if you can't do it, I'm sure there are organizations that can help, but it's not just rentals. There's a lot of different things that this money could be used for. It's great. If you understand that the food that people are getting from the church pantries comes from the people like that. They come from the people, I will wrap it up really quickly, but they come from all of us. So all of us that are also participating and being affected by this pandemic are helping support others who are worse off than we are. So we're continuing to pay. It would be nice if something else would be able to step in and help. Thank you for your.
Thank you. Other comments?
Monique Jones. Monique Jones.
Monique Jones, you're recognized. Hello.
Hi, good evening. My name is Monique Jones. I am a citizen of Fayetteville. I reside at 2620 North Westminster Drive in Fayetteville. I do understand that this money was initially allocated for COVID relief. And when you submitted, and I say you, the county submitted for those funds, you only submitted funds for salaries. This is also a once in a lifetime opportunity that the county could step up and help out by using these funds in this general fund. To the fact that you are right, there are trees, St. James grant in the city of Fayetteville that was from September to December. That was 3 months. We ran out of every single penny. We were spending anywhere from $2,500 to $3,500 a week in food. That's going to equate to about $130,000 to $182,000 this year that St. James is going to have to need in order to feed this community. I don't agree that everybody had access to the PPP loans. And if I have to pull the data and submit it, a lot of minorities did not get approved for PPP loans. If we didn't get approved, there's no need to apply for PPP forgiveness. We're still suffering financially. A lot of us did not get approved through Harvest for PPP loans. I disagree. Marginalized indigenous communities that includes African Americans, Hispanics, Marshallese, as well as immigrants are not being served in our community. There were funds out there with HARC and other community agencies that were given out and they were administered unfairly. They were given away to people that were available to call in, send emails, and also, it's just frustrating. If the marginalized and indigenous community do not have access to phones, internet, and transportation to apply for these funds, by the time they get access, those funds were already redistributed and they were gone. I agree that I have privilege, but it also allows me to have a voice for the voiceless. I am boots on the ground and will go ahead and go above and beyond to share this conversation for the voiceless. I don't agree. Seven Hills does get 2 pallets a week.
20 seconds,
St.
Ms.
James Food
Jones.
Pantry gets 20 pallets per week, and we still run out of food. Seven Hills is now putting in a request for us to feed the community. I plead and pray that this quorum court understand that we talk now, but we will continue by faith to serve this community as we can with the money that we receive from community donations, some grants, benevolent funds from members. We pray that you consider using these funds to help our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Public comments.
Allie Brown.
Allie Brown, you recognized.
Thank you. Judge Wood, can you hear me?
Yes, your name and where you're from.
Can you hear me? Yes, I'm Allie Brown in Fayetteville, Arkansas, Ward 4. I would love to see the JPs that have reservations offer amendments rather than vote this down. The slow rolling of these dollars for Washington County citizens and us discussing other funding considerations for the future is not an exercise in measured funding. It is fiscal favoritism. No one is asking for a savior. We are asking for a responsive government, just like the responsive government some of you all benefited from with the PPP loans. I heard the law and order, limited government argument, private mechanisms over public to fix these issues for us through my conversations. If you do not believe in government efficacy, then you are occupying a seat on our quorum court in vain, especially if you sit on the Budget and Finance Committee. I would like to provide some on-the-ground info per one of our JP's future plans to seek some. Arkansas Children's Hospital saw an increase in the number and severity of child abuse-related cases last year, a troubling pattern in a state that high rates of child maltreatment before the onset of the COVID pandemic. People's rate of child deaths from assault-related causes, which includes abuse and neglect, ranks it 5th among the states, an average of 2.9 from 2000 to 2017, according to federal review of data from March to September shows the number of child maltreatment related cases at the hospital was up 20%, said Dr. Karen Farst, a pediatrician and child abuse specialist. Jenny Monk with the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, who reports on child welfare in the state, found that experts fear the problem is worsening as a result of the emotional and economic stress of COVID-19. Former investigations chief at the Crimes Against Children Division said, and I quote, "I mean, we are seeing the worst child abuse in the state right now. Child maltreatment rates really strongly correlate with stress levels, and COVID has caused a lot of stress."
20 seconds, Mr. Brown.
Please don't prioritize the whataboutism over child welfare. Will we not be eligible for reimbursement at a later date? The panic button has been pushed. The time to act is now. I asked about the administrative fee talking point. It was framed to me like this. If FHA subgrants out $100K to Genesis or St. James for their food pantries, they can use 10K to update the refrigeration by purchasing industrial size ones that can manage the increasing amount of food that it will have to store. So it's not a wasted or frivolous fee. Thank you. Thank you, Judge Wood. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment.
Chris Seawood.
Chris Seawood, you're recognized.
At a minute.
Thank you, Judge.
55.
Chris,
Thank you, Judge
tell
Wood.
who you are and where you're from, Pastor.
Hello?
You're recognized. Go ahead. Tell us who you are and where you're from, Pastor.
I am Chris Seawood. I'm from Springdale, Arkansas. I have the privilege of serving as the executive pastor at the historic St. James Missionary Baptist Church in Fayetteville, Arkansas. You've already heard from two people that work closely with us in our outreach, Miss Sarah Moore and Minister Monique Jones. They are boots on the ground weekly with our pantry operations. And I can tell you that some of the comments that have been made today, though I understand the principle of conservatism, really reek of a amoralism, where we care more about structures than we do about people. And I would invite every JP on that board, on that commission, to come spend time with us at our pantry to see what we really go through every day. What we are trying to do out of our own pockets, as one of the JPs just mentioned, is great that his church built a house. How many more houses could be built if there was a government, a private, and a public partnership formed? We could really see an impact. And that's all what we're asking for. We're asking for public and private partnerships. We have some private partnerships, but the government, we pay taxes for a reason. And even as a church, if everybody paid tithes in our church, we still would come up short in meeting the need. So I implore you all as a commission to reevaluate your stances on these dollars. These dollars are useful. If you gave us $100,000 tomorrow, we'd spend it in 20 weeks. That's just how dire the need is. It is dire. We sit at the intersection. We have Seven Hills in our outreach center, ministering to the homeless. We are addressing poverty, homelessness. We need your support. We plead for support. Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. So public comment time is done, unless there's a suspension of the rules.
I move that we suspend the rules.
JP Hires, move that we suspend the rules. What's the time?
Another
JP
12
Hires,
minutes, please.
pardon me?
Another 12 minutes, please.
All right, 12 minutes. We got a motion on the floor to suspend the rules for public comments for additional 12 minutes. A second by
Second.
JP Washington. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. Go ahead, public comments, 12 minutes.
Susan Gardner.
Susan Gardner, you're recognized.
This is Susan. I'm Susan Gardner. I live at 909 North Hall Avenue. Thank you, Judge. I have direct contact with a lot of my neighbors because I fill the little free pantries in Fayetteville, some of them. I've personally filled these for over 5 years. I filled them a couple of times a week, and I am not a 501c3. I'm just a person doing this. Now I am filling them 3 to 7 times a week, sometimes 5 times in an hour. And I'm only one of hundreds of people that fill these pantries regularly. It costs about $50 to fill the pantry with low-cost items. Marginalized community members tell me that they use these because they often don't, because of the treatment that they receive at local food banks over perceived nationality. The reason they like little free pantries are anonymous. The reports of people taking advantage of overuse nationally is less than 10%. So that's 90% of the people that use these need them. As far as the things with the Seven Hills and the homeless shelter in this latest round with the snow, I disagree that they had plenty of food and plenty of everything else. I personally, in my home, cooked over 100 meals, portioned them out, and with other members, at least 6 other members in the community, got them down there. And so I don't think they're overwhelmed. People are falling through the cracks, and we need y'all to do something.
Thank you, Mrs. Gardner. Public comments?
Nikki Beaver.
Nikki Beaver, you're recognized.
First, I want to say the virtue signaling from JPs to JPs is extremely unprofessional, and it's hard to watch as a citizen. I think that's nasty, and I don't think it's appropriate. The hypocrisy is also, and the misinformation is outrageous. The $4.5 million from the CARES Act is a reimbursement. It is allowed to be spent anyway. It is allowed to be saved in any way. It has no time that it has to be spent in. So whoever said that earlier, that was incorrect. The $7.1 million has to be spent by December 31st, 2021. It can only be spent on rental assistance and utility assistance. That is the money that should be dispersed first. They've already dispersed $1.5 million to the Springdale Housing Authority and $1.5 million to the Fayetteville Housing Authority. We're not sitting on this money. It is being dispersed. And if the crazy people who kept harassing the nonprofit that was going to help distribute it didn't get them to completely not want to work with Washington County, that could have been resolved as well. That could have been dispersed faster. So, I mean, there's been lots of assistance. And y'all are saying that we don't know how long this is going to last. This is unprecedented. You know, we've never dealt with anything like this, but we're in the eye of the storm. We need to spend the money right now, all of it. To me, it's like a teenager talking to their parents. The parents want to save the money because we don't know what's coming. We don't know who we're going to have to feed. 7.1 can go to help those people now, and the 4.5 will be there when that runs out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beaver. Public comment?
Jana Starr.
Jana Starr, you recognize.
Hello. I have been just listening to the conversation. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes. Yes. Who you
Thank
are
you.
and where you're from?
I am from Springdale. I commented earlier about the library, and that's why I was on tonight. And I've just been following this conversation, and I appreciate so much everybody, it seems, on here is caring, and you have, I know all of you have a big heart, I can tell. Some of you want to spend all the money because there's so many needs in our community, which I totally understand. I see that. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a retired school teacher. I've been dealing with this battle for 28 years in helping our communities. But I also agree with some of the JPs who are saying, let's save a little bit for later because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I was looking up on here, I saw on here where all this money, the 7.1 million and the 4.5 million, was all received in our county because of Judge Wood, your staff, grant writers, Sharon Lloyd, your grant writer, who obtained all this money for the county, which I applaud her for that. And I think everyone on here should applaud her for doing that and receiving that money for our community. That is wonderful. I haven't heard anyone say, thank you, Judge Wood and your staff, for getting this money for Washington County. And so I just applaud you and your staff for doing that. And I just want to say, let's do what we can. Let's get out there and help people, but let's also save some for later because we don't know what's going to happen. And I have to agree with JP Robert Dennis when he mentioned that there are a lot of people out there who can't pay mortgages, people who have their first time homes, people who are trying to raise a family, who maybe, bought their first home, so they're not renters, but they're barely making it. I know several people like that right now who lost their jobs due to the pipeline industry. So I applaud all of you, but let's use some good common sense out there. Let's try to help people as much as we can, but let's save some money too and put some back for a rainy day, because I have a feeling we have a few rainy days ahead of us. But thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Starr.
Sherry Main.
Sherry Main, 30 seconds.
Oh, no, it's just 3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Main. You're recognized.
Okay, Sherry Main, Fayetteville, Arkansas. And I just wanted to say that everybody's talking statistics and this and that, and I'll just throw some statistics out there too. The new data for Northwest Arkansas shows there are 2,000 homeless kids under the age of 18 in Northwest Arkansas. These are kids. And then these numbers started growing March of last year. And they're homeless youth. They're nearly 4 times to be abused and used for sex trafficking. A lot of people don't want to think about it, but these kids, you may see them at a skate park, you may see them at Walker Park in Fayetteville, you may see them on the trails, places like McDonald's or the public library. If you look at it in perspective, drugs can be sold one product at a time, but in sex trafficking, a victim can be sold multiple times every day. And they pinpoint these kids. These are kids living on the street, they're homeless. They've been through out of their homes by their parents, or they've, one reason or another, homeless. And our youth deserve better than this. Northwest Arkansas needs to step up and do something to prevent this. And there are even kids going to school that the schools are furnishing lunches to the children while they're in the virtual learning because they have no food at home. They are going hungry. This is a problem, and we're sitting on money that can help this problem. I think you need to look at it from the fact of, if you have 2 coats, give one to someone that needs one. We have 4.5 million or more in our reserves. This 4.5 that came on the coronavirus through the CARES Act is a blessing. Let's not sit on it. Let's spend it. Let's give it, utilize it to the people who it can help. If a rainy day comes, we'll put a bucket out to catch the water on our roof. Let's not build a whole new building and put a new roof on it with this money when there are people out there that don't even have a roof over their head or food in
30 seconds.
So I think we need to put our apples in the bucket and get the oranges out, and let's comparing things that don't have anything to do with anything, and just look at the thing that objective is people are hurting, people are hungry, people are cold, people are
15 seconds,
unhoused.
Ms. Main.
That's the need, and let's fulfill it. I'm a taxpayer. I'm willing to give my $100 and something. Let's fulfill the need, okay? That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mrs. Main. Ms. Patty, we're gonna go ahead and take the roll.
Shannon Marty,
No.
Sean Simons,
No.
Judith Yanez,
Yes.
Patrick Deakins,
No.
Lisa Ecke, Sam Duncan,
No.
Chandra Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Robert Dennis,
No.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Evelyn Rio Stafford,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Abstain.
Jim Wilson,
No.
Butch Pond,
No.
Lance Johnson.
No.
Second reading.
Have 5 for, 9 against, and 1 abstention.
Okay, so that'll move on to next month's agenda. Thanks for the discussion. Item 22, committee reports. County services.
Judge, the committee report is in the agenda packet. Please reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you, JP Duncan. Finance and budget.
Thank you, Judge Wood. Committee reports in the packet.
Thank you, JP Deacons. Jails, law enforcement, and courts. JP Johnson, can you hear? Are you on?
Yeah, a judge, the jail and law report is in, committee report is in the packet. I don't have anything else.
Thank you, JP Johnson. And personnel.
Ditto, it's in the packet. Thank you, Judge.
Personnel. Thank you, JP Ecke. With that, quorum court has been adjourned.